Yeah. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Hippy Dippy Super Sunday. Yeah. Let's start by the introduction. So yeah, shout yourself out. Tell people where they can find you. Where do you lean on the political spectrum and all of these things. And let's start by HardWoodenSock.
All right, sorry. I had to get someone out of my chat real quick. Yeah, I'm HardWoodenSock. Moderate conservative. Just kind of started here on Twitch a little while ago. Still trying to get to there's 50 followers. So if you're watching and you're not followed, I'm gonna pin myself. But no, I appreciate you having me on and look forward to good conversations today.
Yeah. Whick, how are you doing?
Oh, so far so good, but there's still plenty of time for things to go horribly wrong. I'm Whick. Hi, I have a Twitch. I stream usually politics. Twitch.tv/Death of Certainty is where you can find me. I tend to support left positions. I tend to support left-leaning positions. I don't like to call myself a leftist or any kind of label like that. I don't think that's helpful. But yeah, I tend to try to see the other side as well. And I'm convincible, I'm persuadable, and I'm here to give my opinions on things. So hi.
Thank you for joining us. Lyra, how are you doing?
I'm
Or Lyra?
great. Great to be here. I'm LyraShae, pronounced Lyra. A lot of people don't know how to say it, but it's LyraShae. I'm at twitch.tv/LyraShae. I mostly stream games, but I do cover politics in the evenings, and I am very left-leaning. I advocate primarily for market socialism. And yeah, good to be here.
All right, thank you for joining us. Pittelli.
Yeah, my handle there, Pittelli like it is the same that you'll find on Twitch. And if you go to Twitch, then you'll find all my other YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok as well. I appreciate the invite. Should be a good time. And yeah.
All right. Cutsleeve. You're muted, I think.
My name is Cutsleeve. What? No, I'm not. What are you talking about? Hello?
Yeah. We can hear you
Hello?
now.
Okay. My name is Cutsleeve. I identify as conservative. My main principles are negative freedom and maximizing negative and positive freedom through as little intervention as possible.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Vivian, how are you doing?
Hey geek, what's up? Yeah, I'm MxVivianWulf on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm an anti-fascist and historian who focuses on researching far-right extremism and cults and so on. So I talk a lot about that shit. Nice to be here.
All right. Sprouticus.
My name is TheSprouticus. You can find me on Twitch at TheSprouticus, on Twitter with the same tag. But I'm a constitutionalist conservative, and I'm excited to get into this.
Hell yeah. And last but not least, Binx.
And Binx.
Perfect. All right. And with that being said, let's go over the rules real quick. So Hippy Dippy Super Sunday, same format as the Hippy Dippy Roundtable. So 3 topics, 3 hours. Opening statement, you can engage for like 50 minutes. And after that, closing statement. During opening and closing, you cannot interrupt other people. The last time you can address a topic is during the opening for the next topic. During the free form, basically, where you can engage with each other, try to interrupt as little as possible. Sometimes it's necessary to ask for precision and stuff like that, but yeah, try to keep it down to a minimum. Besides that, if you see that 2 people are engaging and you cannot really like jump in, raise your hand. I will give you the mic as soon as possible. Also, if I speak, it's not to give my take, it will be to moderate. I will not be participating, so I will be purely moderating. So when I speak, no one else is speaking. And beside that, nothing TOS, obviously. No misgendering, and yeah, I think we should be fine. And with that being said, let's jump directly into the first topic, which is all right. Was the Chauvin sentence appropriate? So, if you don't know, Derek Chauvin sentencing was recently. So, yeah, was Derek Chauvin sentence appropriate? And we're going to start by Pittelli.
Yeah, so I do believe it was appropriate. I mean, the prosecutors themselves were going after 30 years, and he was given, what, 22 and a half, I believe. He, the earliest, from what I've been reading about, experts say that he would be up for parole would be like 2035 or 2036. And it's also a whole lot worse than what his defense was trying to get, which was probation and the time he already had spent behind bars. And in comparison to other officers that have been tried and actually found guilty and sentenced, dating back to 2005, there's only been 11, and the average was just under 21.7 years, and the median was 15. So if you take those into account, slightly higher than the average, a lot higher than the median. It seems to be pretty appropriate. And again, the prosecution was seeking 30, and they got 75% of that.
All right. I'm going to throw it to Vivian.
Hey, all right. Yeah. So, like, there's two questions here, really, or like, there's two ways to answer this question. Like, first off, like, I don't know who it was who just spoke, but they basically said that like this is the sort of average sentence for a crime of this kind. That's fine. And it seems to be somewhat in line. So the idea of like, is this a proportional sentence? It seems to be somewhat. There's definitely an argument to be made that a sentence should be heavier if somebody is abusing a position of power in order to be able to commit the crime that they committed. So perhaps there could be some argument around that. But broadly, I think 22 and a half years for second degree murder is okay enough. I think more broadly is that this, is this sentence fair? Is the sentence just? Well, no, because the American incarceral system isn't fucking fair or just. Like, this is about how much you guys want to punish Chauvin for what he did. And our carceral systems here in the UK and in the United States, they are built to punish people. They're not built to rehabilitate. So in the arguments and debates that we've heard, there's been a whole bunch of people talking about rehabilitation without actually talking about whether or not this sentence of 22 and a half years in prison is going to rehabilitate this man in any fucking way, shape, or form. So in that sense, I would say that there is no such thing as a just sentence within the American prison system, but in as much as it is proportional compared to the kind of sentences other people get for similar crimes, it seems like it's somewhat proportional, although you could argue for sure that somebody abusing their position of power to commit crime should receive a heavier sentence.
All right, Sprouticus.
Okay, so when I first saw it, the 22 and a half years, I wasn't necessarily upset that Chauvin got 22 and a half years. But under more investigation, if you actually look at Minnesota's sentencing guideline, the range that is underneath the guideline for the crime that he did was 10 years and 8 months to 15 years for the crime. So the judge is trying to make a example out of Chauvin, which I disagree with. That you should just try and make an example out of somebody. And so, no, I disagree with the amount of time that he was given, considering the guidelines that are already set in Minnesota.
All right, I'm going to throw it to Whick. You're muted.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. You know, guidelines are guidelines for a reason, and if a crime is committed that is egregious, or as Vivian was stating, an abuse of power and things like that, it is possible to give someone more than the recommended sentence in our legal system. Now, Vivian made a lot of good points about how our justice system currently fails at rehabilitating its prisoners, at getting them ready to return to society. And so the argument could be made there. But when we ask the question, is this appropriate? The sentence itself is appropriate, I feel. Like 22 and a half years isn't especially egregious for Mortar. And let's remember what he did. He took a life. He purposely took a life. That's what he was convicted of, at least. And so 22 and a half years, no, that's entirely appropriate, I feel.
All right, I'm going to throw it to Lyra.
So I'm kind of of two minds on this, right? Like, I think from a legal perspective, as far as our justice system is concerned, I think, you know, the sentence he got is probably appropriate in terms of the legal sense. And he was charged with second-degree murder, and actually he was found guilty on 3 different counts. So I think from a legal perspective, you know, 22 years is probably appropriate. But then, you know, I'm also of the mind, like, I don't think that our criminal justice system should be focused on punishment either. It should be focused on reform. Unfortunately, right now, it's definitely focused on punishment. So, like, as far as like the actual crime is concerned, you know, is 22 years enough in terms of like a punishment? I don't know about that. Is that enough time to reform? Is it even possible to reform a guy like Chauvin in our current criminal justice system? I don't know, but I think from a legal perspective, that's probably the best we could have hoped for.
All right, I'm going to throw it to Binx. You're muted.
Yeah, it was appropriate.
All right. HardWoodenSock.
Yeah, I mean, I think the punishment was actually the sentence was appropriate. You know, when you look at the aggravating factors which were put forth by the prosecution, which allowed the judge to go over the guidelines of, you know, the 10.5 to 15, and could go up to 30. He kind of just played the middle, you know, instead of going, you know, really heavy handed and being like, no, it's going to be 30. You know, he was found guilty. The judge, I think, did a pretty good job here. He took into account his the aggravating factors that were pushed by the prosecution, and yeah, that's about it. I'm interested to see, though, if the judge's notes do come out about why he came to that decision, because I know that both the prosecution and the defense got like a manifesto, basically, of like why he came to the decision he did. And I think it's like 24 pages long, so it'd be very interesting to actually like read that if it's public, if it becomes public.
All right, and Cutsleeve.
Okay, so Eric Chauvin got charged with 3 cases: second-degree murder, third-degree unintentional murder, and second-degree manslaughter. Although the prosecution was going for 30 years, the max for his charges was 40 years. The reason he got a reduction is because this would be known as his first major crime, which limits the ceiling at which the judge could sentence the defense. The big misconception is that charges don't stack. They take the biggest one using umbrella law, which means they just take the charges with the biggest crime and apply them to all the crimes. Using the prison's calculator, you can take the 22 years multiplied by 0.8, and you get his probable prison sentence, which is 17 years. the average penal time for the crime he did was around 30 years. But specifically in Minnesota, the guidelines outlined by the state suggested that Chauvin gets specifically 12 and a half years. But the prosecution argued for special cases in which they said that there were more aggravating factors which led for the justification for him to be charged more. And that's why you lead with your seemingly absurd decision of 22 and a half years, which is 10 years over the restrictions, is because, special case, meaning they can like overcharge him on, special factors.
All right. Did I forget anyone?
Is that everybody?
Yep, you're good.
Yeah. Okay. You can
Yes,
engage.
I'm glad Cutsleeve brought up that the maximum sentencing in the guidelines there, Minnesota State Statute, what was it, 609.19, murder in the second degree, subdivision 2, unintentional murders, is 40 years, right? Is the maximum sentence that you could have got for that. I don't give a fuck about like averages and shit. We've got to recognize that this is an exceptional case. This isn't just somebody like beating somebody up in a bar fight and accidentally like hitting him in the wrong place and killing them. It's like an abuse of power by a person in a position of authority. I think it's perfectly reasonable that you would get more than the average prison time for this crime, right? If we were to compare it to other crimes that are similar within the state, it stands to reason that he would get a bit of extra time because of that. I honestly don't see any problem with this whatsoever. SprouticUs obviously doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about because he listed the maximum sentence as something like 15 years or whatever.
That's the guideline. You're right. That's the guideline. And that's actually coming from CNN.com. So a very, very not
fuck
Republican
CNN.com.
source.
I'm looking at the literal. I'm looking at the literal
I'm telling you,
Minnesota State
I'm telling you
statute
where
right
I'm
now.
telling you where I got it right. So the Minnesota Sentencing
good. I'm
guideline
glad
gives a
you
range
look
of
at
10 years to
CNN.
8 months to 15 years for crime. And so what I'm also stating is that it was quoted by the defense's attorney that this was a historical sentence. So this isn't like your average or the okay or anything. This was the judge decide that he's going to make an example out of somebody, and I'm against that because if you're going to have justice for one person, you need justice for all. And for one person to be treated much more harshly just to be made an example out of, I disagree with that almost completely.
Sorry, can you show me? Can you show me what other police officers in the state of Minnesota have been charged with second degree murder, and tell me about their sentences? Or are you arguing that absolutely everybody who commits a second-degree murder, right, should receive the exact same sentence, regardless of any kind of circumstances around the act?
I mean, if the people so there's a range, right? So 10 years and 8 months to 15 years. That is the range. That is the guideline range. So that
I've just put the fucking guidelines in the chat. It's a maximum of 40 years for the crime.
That in fact does not mean that every person would get the same exact sentence, right? And if the people of Minnesota don't like the guidelines, then they don't have to like the guidelines. They can elect other people to change the guidelines. That's how the election system works. With this being said, I'm not exactly upset. Yeah, so I'll link the source that I'm on right now. I don't know where the hell you put your link, but you obviously didn't put it whereby.
I linked the Minnesota State statute in the stream chat right there, like the actual fucking law, rather than a CNN actual article.
You still didn't tell me where you put it. Stream chat.
When talking about legality,
she's speaking about Mr. Geek's stream chat, but I'm just to characterize this as some sort of that the judge was making an example. When the defense attorney mentioned that it was a landmark case, he wasn't talking about the sentence here, that the sentence was somehow historically significant.
I actually have to correct you on that. Floyd family attorney Ben Crump in a statement said the historic sentence brings a family and country one step closer to healing by delivering closure and accountability. So there's a little bit of a correction. The attorney was talking about the sentence, not the case.
Okay.
Enough.
The sentence compared to what? Compared to what other police officers that have committed the crime of second-degree murder in the state of Minnesota? Have there been any that have been fucking charged? Have there been any that have been found guilty? I don't know. I don't think there's been any that have been found guilty of second-degree murder in the state of Minnesota, but you can go ahead and look that up. If you think that this is so exceptional, you need to have something similar to compare it to. And like, as far as I know, there are no other cases that are similar to compare it to.
And that's
That's
why
what
it's a
makes it a historic
yeah,
case,
exactly.
because it sets a precedent.
It's a historic. I mean, the lawyer literally said historic sentence. So you guys are saying,
Indeed,
you guys
because
are
it's
saying
historic
historic
because
case.
it's the first
historic
one.
So
sentence.
you guys are saying
First thing that's
historic case to try and miscontribute the quote that is from the
Okay,
actual
it's a
lawyer. From,
historic sentence because it is, because as far as I know, okay, and you could prove me wrong here by doing a little bit of googling if you feel like it, right? But like, as far as I know, it is the first time that a police officer has been sentenced, right, found guilty, sentenced to jail time for second-degree murder in the state of Minnesota. Am I wrong?
I'm looking, but it's gonna take some time. It's not gonna be like a 2-second search. So I mean, you can keep coming after me with this, but you still haven't posted your link, and you still haven't posted your link and whereby, which I confusing.
Oh, I'm
I
really
would like that
fucking
link
sorry.
whenever
You
can.
can't just
So,
click on Geeks Chat and go look
so
at it.
I mean, obviously, you're having me Google things, and then you're like, "Oh, go Geeks Chat and get the link." You know
Mr.
what?
Geek-
Let's
Mr. Geek
try and make
posted
this
it
as
in
hard.
the-
Let's try and make this hard as
such
fuck
hard
Mr.
work.
Geek
possible,
posted
right?
it in
So,
the chat. By the way,
we're gonna
by
keep.
chat, it
So
is in
what
the
I'm
Sorry,
gonna keep moving. This
I
is
just
from-
realized I was muted on Discord. Okay, I posted the link in the chat. Sorry about that. And yeah,
It's such hard work. I had to click two links.
Well, when you have
Okay,
when you
I
have
just-
me,
I just
when
wanna
you have me
say-
do, so when you're having me do, when you're having me do,
Anyway.
so stop.
Let's
When
go
you're
back
having
on
me
the
do
topic.
all these other things.
No
When you're having
wonder
me
you
do all these
don't
other
know
things,
shit
it's a
if
little
it's so
bit
hard for you
harder.
to look stuff up.
Hey, if I could actually talk, Vivian, and you not interrupt me, that would be fucking amazing.
Well, you know,
So with this being
I'll
said,
stop
it's actually a
interrupting
little
you
bit
when
harder
Geek
when you
tells me to.
Okay, well, it's a little harder to actually go through. Like you're telling me to Google this, do that. I'm not going to sit here and do whatever you
It's
want
not that
me to.
hard.
Okay.
It's really not that hard.
Okay, you can say that, but you're having me do 25 things at once, and I'm not going to do that to try and prove your point.
okay.
Okay.
Let's go back to the debate, please.
I just
Let's
wanna
go back
say,
to
like-
the topic.
My
And
intro.
Well, let me add this real quick because I actually did the Google. Okay, he was the first white Minnesotan police officer to be convicted of murdering a black person. It was the second time an officer has been convicted of murder in Minnesota.
Okay.
What was the
cool.
sentence for the first guy?
So pretty historic then.
Does it say that?
It does not. I can look it up. If you want.
Okay, I'm pretty
Was
sure
he
it's.
found
I'm
guilty
pretty sure it's.
specifically of second-degree murder in the other case as well? Like,
I'm almost positive that the 10 years to 8 months to 15 years for the crime was because it was the first time that this person was being convicted. As you know, that first-time offenders don't get harsh of a sentence as repeat offenders, and the repeat offenders would get something closer to the 40 years. And that's how it works in most prison sentences.
Right.
And the reason that you guys I don't know why you guys are not understanding that. But the fact that you guys aren't
Everybody
is a little
understands that.
confusing
Right.
to me.
So,
Okay.
Vivian,
Okay, so
do you
what-
not think
regardless-
that him
Wait,
being a
Vivian, let
do
me
you not think
ask you
that
a
him
direct
being a
Wait,
police
wait, wait.
do you not think that him being a police
I-
officer in a position of authority ought to mean that sentence is harsher than it otherwise would be?
So do I think a police officer sentence for that should be harsher than it would be for a citizen?
Yes.
In the current standings
Especially
of
if
today,
that police
no.
officer used if that police officer used the fact that he was a police officer to be able to carry out that crime.
I wouldn't say that he used his statute as police officer to be able to carry out that crime. I think there was
You fucking
definitely.
kidding me?
I think there was. So I can't even finish what I'm saying. Can this
Well,
be
no, 'cause you keep
moderated by
talking shit.
Mr. Geek?
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
you
yeah.
moderate this somehow, please?
Okay, Vivian, take it down a notch. Go ahead, Sprouticus.
Thank you. So there was definitely gross negligence. He was definitely grossly negligent. I don't feel bad for Chauvin. I don't feel bad that he got 22 and a half years, but I'm staying consistent with what I'm saying because I think this is how it apply to all people. If you've got guidelines, the guidelines need to be followed. And then if you don't, I mean, if you want to change those guidelines, elect people to change those guidelines. But other than that, I think you should have to follow those guidelines and not just try to make an example out of somebody.
I want to let Vivian
Yeah,
respond. After
so
that, I
here-
want to throw it to Cutsleeve and Whick.
Okay, I just think this is fucking absurd. The idea that like Chauvin's crime, him being a police officer, had nothing to do with his ability to carry it out. If somebody's kneeling on somebody's fucking head in the middle of the street, right? Like if they're not wearing a police officer's uniform, surrounded by other cops, okay, there's a much higher chance, one, that you can call the police and they'll come and fucking sort it out, right? Or two, that like a bystander might be able to try and save this guy from being killed. All right, the police, the reason that he was able to carry out that crime in the way that he did was because he was a fucking police officer, right? And people just had to stand there and watch over the course of 9 minutes as George Floyd was suffocated to fucking death. All right, that because what are they going to do? Call more cops, right? Are they going to fucking try and attack Chauvin to get him off while he's surrounded by other cops with guns? No, of course they're fucking not. Not only that, if you are in a position of authority, if you are in a position of power, and you abuse that authority to commit a crime, it is a more serious offense, right? We recognize this when we're talking about like things like pedophilia, for example, right? If you're in a position of power over somebody, if you're a teacher, if you're a college professor, if you're a fucking daycare center person, right, you get a harsher sentence because those people have been placed in your care. And in the United States, the general public are somewhat placed in the care of the fucking police, right? At the very least, they are placed under the authority of the police. And that police officer abused his authority and murdered an American citizen in broad fucking daylight, and nobody could do anything to fucking stop him because he is the law. Okay? So yes, it should be considered an exacerbating factor when we come to sentencing. The same for the racial angle if that was ever proved in court as well. Like any kind of racially based crime or hate-based crime should also be considered an exacerbating factor.
Race was never
All
brought
right,
up in court.
I want to throw it to Cutsleeve, and after that, Whick. Cutsleeve,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So real quick, race and any sort of hate crime was not only not brought up in court, but actively dismissed by the court. They actively said that this was not a crime of race. Specifically on the charge of he had a position of power, even though I do think it deserves a little bit of an increase, I don't think position of power means that you get double the sentence, even if you're not a preceding felon. Because what this does is you basically set the guideline or the precedent that any police officer doing any crime should receive double the punishment of, so to say, a
Yeah,
citizen.
absolutely.
Good.
Yes.
But what I want to, yeah, okay. So specifically, what I want to ask Vivian is that if guidelines, the theoretical representation of guidelines, is to direct unpreceding things, right? Guidelines are to guide things that haven't happened before. Not for the sentences we do know, they're for the sentences we don't, right? Is that
What?
true?
I mean,
So
no, they're just sort of
yeah.
no.
Guidelines
I
are
mean,
used to guide the unprecedented sentences, right? It's not
okay. And if the guidelines don't cover, what you ought to do in a specific situation, when that situation is exceptional, right? You have to move outside of the guidelines. And let's be fair. These are guidelines, okay? This was heavily fucking debated over in court, all right? The judge didn't give the prosecutors nearly as much as they were fucking asking for. The maximum possible sentence was 40 years, and you're bitching about this cunt getting 22 and a half. Now, don't get me wrong, I fucking hate the American carceral system, but if we're talking about like a proportionate sentence, this was absolutely that.
Yeah, so specifically, the 40 years is related to if he does multiple sort of hard-hitting crimes, right? So if he had a battery assault and if he had like a felon assault, then the 40 years would be more probable. But the guideline for people
it depends upon mitigating factors. This is what jurisprudence is, right?
Yeah, no.
When somebody commits a crime,
factors include repeat offenders for major crimes, which
when somebody commits a crime, right? And the judge comes to sentencing, okay, they consider exacerbating and mitigating factors. They might consider, for example, a crime of passion, or if somebody was like being repeatedly harassed by somebody, right, and they ended up killing them, they might decide that that is a mitigating factor and reduce the sentence, okay?
Wait, now, given all the mitigating factors of the case, the sentencing guidelines was 10 to 15 years because 1, this was not a racially motivated crime. 2, this is not a hate motivated crime. And 3, this was his first major offense. So, again, back to my question.
And 4, this was a massive
How am I
abuse of
wrong?
power because he is in a position of supreme
A
authority.
massive abuse
Police
of power
officers
is
have
not part of the
far
guidelines.
more rights than the average fucking citizen.
Vivian,
And he chose
Vivian.
to exercise those rights in the prosecution of a murder, right? So, like,
Vivian.
I want to let
Abuse of
Cutsleeve
power is
respond.
not-
After that, I want to throw it to Whick, Spartacus, HardWoodenSock.
Yeah,
Cutsleeve, go
abuse
ahead.
of power is not a part of the guidelines. It's not a part of the provisions. If you want to add it to there,
so who
you-
cares?
Yeah, okay. So we have
Okay,
to.
so they had to
differentiate-
they had to assess
Oh, wait,
something that was
Vivian,
outside the
it's my
guidelines,
turn.
and they did.
Oh wait, Vivian. We have to differentiate what's legally representational or what's legally reasonable, like the prescriptions, and we have to differentiate what we ought to do morally. So you're saying morally he should be given a better sentence, but legally this is not the case because 1, position of power is not a part of the guidelines to restricting whenever someone gets
Who
jailed.
cares about the fucking?
Why-
Why do you care so much about these fucking guidelines? Obviously,
You guys keep
right?
bringing up
If
guidelines,
we-
but
if
like,
we- If we understand, right, that abuse of power is an exacerbating factor in a crime,
It's
okay,
not.
and
It's not.
shut the fuck
That's
up.
not true.
Okay, shut the fuck up. I don't care about what
Wait,
fucking.
because you're
shit.
wrong, you're gonna shout me down.
Not because I'm wrong. Not because I'm wrong, right? If somebody is abusing their power, right? If they have power and authority over other people and they use that power and authority to commit a crime, right? Generally
Well,
in
it doesn't matter.
society, we would recognize that to be a more serious infraction than somebody who has no power, right?
That's a
An
moral
abuse of
prescription. That's not
authority,
what the
an
law
abuse of
says.
authority. I don't care. So an abuse of authority is generally considered to be a worse moral action than committing the same moral action outside of authority, right? Like that would be pretty universally considered among people because basically
Vivian,
abuse of authority bad, right? Add it to the
Vivian,
crime.
if the judge-
worse
if the
Alright,
judge
alright.
said,
Now,
like,
wait,
you're gonna-
Alright.
I haven't even made the
Wait, I
point.
don't care. Wait, it's my
If you
sentence.
say,
If
if
hold
you
on.
say,
No, stop.
you're not
Wait.
even letting me finish the point. and you're gonna argue against
no,
it.
my sentence first. You
Okay,
didn't let me
everyone
finish.
stop. Okay,
That's why children
I'm
shouldn't
going
be
to
on
throw it
panels.
to. I know.
You let me finish
Wick,
first, Vivian. Don't you?
Wick, go ahead.
So this focus on these guidelines as if legally we can't ever go outside of these guidelines. This is wrong. They're guidelines. They're not laws. They're not mandatory. You do
Thank
not,
you.
as a judge, have to follow the guidelines. You can step outside of that in a legal and be perfectly reasonable and perfectly legal to do and there's various reasons to do that. Sprouticus's argument that this was somehow setting an example is, I think, asinine in a very real way. And no offense to you, Sprouticus, but the argument is what I'm saying. So if you wanted to set an example, there is a maximum sentence that is far, it exceeds far, I think 40 years was what it was. If you wanted to make an example, there are far better ways to do it than simply have it somewhat above the guidelines as it were. So again, to leap from he didn't follow the guidelines exactly to the letter, so he must be setting an example. It misses a few steps in your logic train here. So we gotta look at like what were the exacerbating factors, and there were plenty of them. And again, you can look at the trial, and hopefully the judge's notes do come out, so we
What are
can
the
get.
exacerbating factors?
Oh, well, again, if the judge's notes come out, we can look at what he felt they were. But obviously, he felt there were some
Wait,
there.
you said there were multiple. Name me one.
Name me one. I wasn't the judge in that case. I cannot tell you what the judge
Okay,
said.
what? You can't say there's multiple
Again,
exacerbating
if your argument
factors.
is that he didn't like, do you think that in every case that the judge has to follow the guidelines? Do you think that's a legal requirement somehow?
So specifically,
Answer my
when it
question. Do
comes
you think
to-
that's a legal
Yeah,
requirement?
I'll
Judges
answer
have
your
to follow the guidelines. Yes or no?
I'll
It's a
answer
yes or
your
no
question.
question.
The guidelines
Is it a
are
yes
there.
or a no? Do
Wait,
they have to?
I'm-
Are they
wait,
legally obligated to follow the guidelines?
Oh, I'm muted.
We-
Okay,
we
guys,
have
the
to- wait.
CNN article I linked. Give me 1 second. The CNN article I linked actually has a little bit from the memorandum that the judge put out. Cahill wrote that 2 aggravating factors warranted a harsher sentence. That Chauvin abused his position of trust or authority and treated Floyd with particular cruelty. Chauvin, the judge, treated Floyd Chauvin, the judge, wrote, treated Floyd without respect and denied him the dignity owed to all human beings. Those were two aggravating factors in the 22-page memorandum the judge put out.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the data.
So legally, going back to your question, guidelines are supposed to be there for these things that are unprecedented, right? Because guidelines aren't for the crimes
That's
that we
not
do.
necessarily true.
No,
No,
stop.
guidelines are there to have a kind of a legal kind of framework.
Stop. Wait. You gotta let me finish. Guidelines aren't for the crimes we do know because we sentence the crimes we do know. Guidelines are for the crimes we
That's
don't
not
know.
true.
But my question is, my question to you is like, what if the judge just said like, Chauvin does life in prison? Would you be okay with that?
No, I would not. Again,
Why
like
not?
if he had wanted to make an example, if he had wanted to make an example of this guy, this is the kind of things he would have done.
Why wouldn't you be okay with that?
Well, because I'm for rehabilitative justice, and simply putting someone in prison for life in our current prison system doesn't help.
Yeah, if you're for rehabilitation justice, then you should have like not the lowest possible time, but you should have a decent amount of time, but like not over. Like 12 years is a good time to like rehabilitate yourself, right?
For murder, for killing someone? Look, I am not a sociologist. I'm not a psychologist. I do not know the best way to rehabilitate someone. But to simply claim that like 12 years is fine for murder seems just kind of silly to me.
Wait,
I think it's probably fine. It depends on whether or not they're rehabilitated. Wait, look, I've brought up the fucking
Vivian,
guide.
I'm not talking to
No,
you.
Let me just ask you this: why do you think we have judges? If you think the sentencing guidelines are the end all be all, why even have judges? Why not just sentence people according to the guidelines? We have judges to take into account the case and apply a sentence as they deem appropriate according to the circumstances. The guidelines are just that; they're guidelines.
Yeah, Lyra. But
it's included in the guidelines. Is what I'm trying to say.
Ask me the question.
Okay, whatever. It's all right. Carry on then.
Yeah, if the judge sentenced Chauvin to life, what would your reaction be? Would you be like, "That's fine"?
Well, no, because that would be above the maximum sentence.
Vivian, I didn't ask you, Lyra.
Would I be fine with it? No, I wouldn't.
Why not?
Because that would be against
because
the law.
I don't think that would be an appropriate sentence either. I mean, why does it have to be the because I already explained this. I'm for rehabilitation, not punishment, right? If we just throw him in there for the rest of his life, then what are we doing exactly?
So if we're doing rehabilitation, I would propose that rehabilitation should mean less time in prison, right? But decent enough time where you can think about your actions. And I think
so. Where do you draw the line then? What is a decent amount of time?
Yeah, for me, a good place to draw the line are the guidelines. I think 12 to 15 years is a good job for rehabilitation, right?
So we're back onto the guidelines.
Let's just step outside the guidelines for a second here and just consider like the mitigating circumstances. Okay, this was a person in a position of authority. This person was supposedly acting as the law, and it's just like Vivian brought up. Basically, was only able to commit this crime because he was an officer of the law, and people didn't know how to respond. Right, so you have to take that into account when it comes to this kind of sentencing, because it was his abuse of power that allowed this to happen in the first place.
Yeah, even if I take the cruelty into account, in these countries like Norway, Finland, Sweden, these Norwegian countries, even their first-degree murder, the absolute worst, with mens rea proven with a confession, their sentencings are 14 to 15 years.
Okay, but we're talking about entirely different legal systems. We're talking about entirely different prison systems. We're talking about entirely different judicial systems. It's a false comparison.
Wait. But like, real quick, Norway in these Norwegian countries have the best rehabilitation, right? And if we're going to keep following America's standards, we have the worst rehabilitation. 75% of our criminals come back to jail within 5 years. Once you get into the system, it's hard to get out.
If you're arguing that we should reform our prison system, I'm with you. We can agree on that.
But we can't start talking about Norway's sentencing until we like reform our entire criminal justice system.
I want to let Cutsleeve finish his point. After that, I want to throw it to HardWoodenSock and Pittelli.
Right.
What about
so,
me?
Sprout was ahead of me.
Yeah. Okay. So if we look
Yeah.
to these countries that have very good legal systems, I'm just like, at this point, I'm in favor of just a copy paste system, right? Because America's criminal justice system is like messed up for not only men but for black people too. And if you're a black man, you're super like effed up. So I'm in favor of just copying and pasting what the Norwegian countries do. And in these Norwegian countries, even the heinous crimes, first-degree murder, they have 14 to 15 years of jail time. And this is the best for rehabilitation because 14 to 15 years is like golden period where, of course, you pay your crime, you pay your time for your crime, but also you get enough time to think and you don't go insane from spending too much time in prison.
All right. I want
Can I just bring up that they didn't even deviate from like, so the guidelines allow departure from the guidelines in situations where there is an abuse of power. It's right fucking there, okay? In August 2020, Minnesota sentencing guidelines, all right? Like you can go down, you can scroll through it in multiple sections. In fact, they allow for departure from the guidelines in the case of mitigating or exacerbating factors, which is exactly what I was fucking saying. And one of those factors is in fact an abuse of power. So, like, just because they say in the sentencing document, right, the sentencing memo, that like they have departed from the guidelines, he gives the judge actually fucking quotes the sentencing guidelines in reference to why he's departing from them, right? This is so fucking stupid. Like, you bring up a CNN article and that's all you fucking read on it. Why?
All right. I want to. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so to bring up a couple things, it seems to be misunderstood here on this panel that it seems to be that certain people on this panel believe that Derek Chauvin was charged with an intentional charge. He was not charged with an intentional charge. In fact, according to NPR.org, Chauvin was found guilty of unintentional second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. None of those require intention. And the only reason they got second-degree murder was because it's considered unintentional second-degree murder. So with that being said, according to the post that Vivian put out, factors that should not be used as reasons for departure are the following factors: race, sex, and this is where it's going to get to this, right? So employment factors, including occupation or impact of sentence on profession or occupation, employment history, employment at time of offense, and employment at time of sentencing. And the part I'm going to focus on is occupation or impact of sentence on profession or occupation. So his occupation. So
okay,
no.
no.
So listen. No, I'm going to keep talking. Okay,
Actually,
second
stop.
moderation because this is
I read this
interrupted by everybody.
I read this entire passage.
I get interrupted by everybody. It's fine. You know
Well,
what?
yeah,
Just keep
because you're
interrupting me.
applying the wrong fucking thing to the circumstances.
Vivian, you gotta let him finish. You just gotta take notes at this.
All
That's
right.
fucking
You gotta let
wrong.
people
Oh, shut
Okay.
the fuck up, Cutsleeve.
So according to
Sprouticus, go ahead. After that, Pittelli and Whick. And
can I
Vivian.
continue?
Yeah.
Okay, so the part I'm going to focus on says occupation or impact of sentence on profession or occupation. So the factors that should not be used as a reason for departure, one of those being occupation. And to further on that, the court found it unintentional second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. If something is unintentional, it can't also be an abuse of power, because an abuse of power would therefore have to be in and of itself intentional. So if he wasn't charged with an intentional second-degree murder, the jury found him not guilty of any intention of killing George Floyd. He was not found guilty of that. So therefore, you cannot imply intention to the charge, and you have to go by the guidelines of Minnesota, where you cannot be used as a reason for departure, and one of those being occupation.
Okay, please,
Oh,
for the love of fucking Christ, tell me this is one of those panels where people get voted off. Because if we have to listen to somebody bring up such a stupid fucking non sequitur for 5 minutes again,
I'm going to mute people.
Wait, you're not ad hominem anymore.
Here
Not
is why
everyone.
that is fucking stupid, okay? Because if you scroll down just a couple of fucking paragraphs, Sprouticus, you will see the abuse of power sentence in which they list a number of occupations in which this could be the fucking case. The reason
Abuse of
they are
power
including
requires intent.
occupations there, the reason they are including occupations there, right, is saying that you cannot use it as mitigating factors. It is earlier in the document when they are talking about mitigating factors. You cannot use the fact that somebody is a police officer to give them a lighter sentence.
Abuse of power requires intent.
I actually
Okay,
disagree with that.
no,
right
it
there.
All right,
doesn't. You
Moment.
can
Whick,
abuse your
So,
power by
context.
being negligent. Okay,
Well,
you can be in a position of power and be negligent and thus cause the fucking death of somebody. Okay, and you wouldn't have been able to do that otherwise if you weren't in that position of power. And so it is an exacerbating factor, regardless of intent.
all right,
So,
Pittelli,
like,
go ahead.
Sprouticus-
Pittelli.
Whoa,
I
you're
just want to
skipping me,
get
Geek.
Pittelli.
You skip me.
Go ahead,
Geek.
Sock.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
Who did I skip?
You skip
No,
me,
go ahead,
Geek.
Sock. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So, I mean, in the New York Times article that I'm looking at right now, it cites that Mr. Chauvin objectively remained indifferent, and Mr. Floyd was begging for his life and obviously terrified by the knowledge that he was likely to die. It doesn't say anything about the abuse of power. That was the two aggravating factors that at least the New York Times is citing. That the
CNN is
judge.
citing the same ones.
Okay, so but in neither of those does it say abuse of power, right? While yes, I do agree that he did probably abuse his power, right? But in the actual like memorandum, it doesn't
The
say
sentencing
abuse
memo,
of
yes,
power.
it does. It says this court found that the evidence at trial proved beyond a reasonable doubt the following four aggravated sentencing factors: that Mr. Chauvin abused a position of trust and authority, that he treated George Floyd with particular cruelty, that children were present during the commission of the offence, and that Mr. Chauvin committed the crimes as a group with the active participation of 3 other individuals. Okay, those are the exacerbating factors, and they are all listed in the Minnesota sentencing guidelines.
Okay.
That's what I was saying earlier when I said that he quoted directly from the sentencing guidelines in why he departed from those guidelines in sentencing.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm not saying that he shouldn't have departed from the guidelines or sentencing, because I think like, you know, upon looking at the aggravating factors, it makes sense, right? The guidelines are only there for, you know, they're guidelines. They're not laws. They're not like they're not mandatory.
They're guidelines for sentencing where mitigating and exacerbating factors don't exist, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's how best to look at them, because they specifically provide for departure from those guidelines in cases where exacerbating or mitigating factors do exist.
No, yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah.
No, but I
So the
think
judge
like,
followed the letter of the law. That's what I'm saying, right? This
Yeah.
wasn't like some exceptional
course.
example that he was setting because of public opinion or anything. He was following the guidelines in departing from them.
Of course, no, I'm agreeing with you. No, I'm just trying to like, you know, reiterate the point that it's okay to, you know, just use the guidelines as, you know, all right, cool, like that's a little framework, you know, if there's no other issues going on in this case. But if there's other issues, then I don't understand why we're arguing that he didn't follow the guidelines. He didn't go above the maximum sentence, right? If he went above the maximum sentence, all right, cool, yeah, then we can be like, all right, that judge is abusing his power. But he didn't. He cited the reasons why he went above the guidelines, right? It's not like he did it just because, oh my gosh, you know, public's gonna hate me. You know, if he really wanted to, you know, appease the mob, he would have just sentenced him to 40 years and been like, all right, cool, we're done, and not even said anything, right? So he's citing the reasons why. So I don't understand why we're getting hung up on, you know, him departing the guidelines, because, you know, let's face it, like our parents set rules, right? And do we depart the rules? You know, when we're growing up, quite a bit. So
Look
like,
at Sock being reasonable. Good on you.
see, that's why they hate centrists, because it's just like, fuck, like it's just we're fighting about nothing, it seems like.
All right, I want to throw it to Pittelli, and after that, Whick and Cutsleeve.
Well, we're fighting because one particular side wants to revere Chauvin as some kind of martyr to like
No, I
leftist
already said I don't give a shit
over-policing.
about
What?
Chauvin.
Okay, wait, Pittelli, go ahead.
Let Peterly
Okay,
talk. For Peterly.
Pittelli,
So,
go ahead.
the case that we were mentioning before, where the previous Minnesota case where an officer killed someone, was Justine Diamond, and she was shot by Mohammed Noor, and he was sentenced to 12 and a half years, but he was only found guilty of third-degree murder and manslaughter and acquitted of second-degree intentional murder. So it's a different scenario. And the also part of the rehabilitative justice thing, it's not just the amount of time you spend in prison, right? It's what we do when you get out of prison, how society reintegrates you back into polite society, how you're treated in prison, what kind of education you're able to get. It's not just, 12 years is rehabilitative justice and 22 isn't. There's so much more that goes into rehabilitating a person besides just the amount of time in prison. So when you mention like the Nordic countries that only do whatever 14 or 15 years, okay, but I'm sure they do a litany of other things to reintegrate those ex-cons back into society rather than just worrying about how much time they spent in prison.
Right. I think Wick's up next.
Oh, okay. Well, I just want to kind of address Cutsleeve's point real quick, that this copy and paste idea of that we could just copy and paste another country's judicial system on ours. No, the judicial system's tied to so many other factors, and I think Pittelli hit on it very well. It's not just how long we set someone in prison, but what we do with them. I think that bears repeating. That's a great point. And also, after they get out of prison and after they're out of the system, how are they treated by society? How are they treated? How easy is it for them to get jobs? How easy is it for them to be reintegrated into the populace? So it's not as simple and it's not as easy as just copy and pasting. There's so many other things that have to go into this. And if we want to talk about prison reform, I think that's a great topic. I think that's something that me and Cutsleeve can probably agree on, that we both see that the American justice system has failed in a lot of ways. Rehabilitation is a broken promise that we have given to the American people, because it just doesn't happen in our system. But again, we can't just copy and paste some other countries with a load of different cultural factors, a load of different an entirely different legal system. No, it's just foolish.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cutsleeve.
So specifically addressing the point, although that there are many other factors to rehabilitation specifically, yeah, prison sentencing is one of them. So I think prison sentencing is a step towards rehabilitation. If we adopt these models that are fair to prisoners, I think we can use that as a feedback loop to adopt other prison reforms, such as I'm in favor of not having the felony. When you fill out your job applications, they ask if you're a felon. I'm in favor of removing that question all in entirety, right? Because a felon can list from a range of murderers to aggravated assault, everyone having different crimes and different intentions, but none of them seems to get hired much. But these all go into prison reform, as you guys said. But I do think prison sentence is one of the key ones. If you're sentenced to 40 years, I'm not saying this is the example, but I'm saying this is an example. If you're sentenced to 40 years, it doesn't matter how society reintegrates you. At that point, you might go insane, right? So sentencing is a big, major part. And I assure you, none of you guys disagree with this. So specifically, when it comes to these Norwegian countries who people commit crimes worse than Chauvin, shocker, yeah, but people commit crimes worse than Chauvin, they only get 14 years. They only get 15 years. They have a PS2. They have, I heard the mass terrorist who killed dozens of people, he had a PS2 in his in his prison cell. He had a TV in his prison cell. I mean, he was loaded.
Were these people cops though?
These people were worse than cops. They were terrorists.
Okay, but Did they commit their terrorism in the process of doing their job as a police officer or a military officer or a
Right.
member of the U.S.
Hey, a
government? Blah blah
terrorist
blah blah blah.
is worse
Also,
than a
this is the
cop
stupidest argument
using a
ever.
coward.
Like arguing about like what should be the prison time for a particular for a particular crime in order to make sure that somebody is rehabilitated. This would assume that the US prison system is supposed to be rehabilitative in any fucking form anyway, and it's
it
it's
to be.
basically not,
I
right?
want it to be
And
rehabilitated.
on top of that, if you were trying to design a rehabilitative system of justice, you wouldn't have mandatory minimums or mandatory
I
maximums.
don't like
You would
those.
have
I don't
people
like those either.
okay, fine, but you would have people being assessed on an individual basis as to like whether or not they are rehabilitated and are safe to be let back out into society. That would be the only way to do it. You wouldn't be able to say, oh, well, I think 40 years is too much, or I think 5 years is too little, right? However much it takes to make sure that it is safe to let somebody back out onto the streets is how much time that they would spend incarcerated.
Vivian, do you think which one's going to be easier to rehabilitate? A terrorist who's killed dozens of people, or a police officer or Chauvin? Who do you think's easier to rehabilitate?
Well, I think that largely depends. In fact, I think that the police officer is likely to have a huge portion of the American populace still sympathizing with him, still calling him a hero, still thinking he's been martyred by the left because they overcharged him or over-sentenced him rather, and is likely to receive some support from the general public. Whereas a terrorist, for example, is likely to receive much less support from the general public, and if cut off from people who share his ideology, he may be able to reform because he'll recognize that he did wrong far faster than the police officer. It entirely depends upon the culture in which they exist.
Yeah, Vivian. Well, Vivian, you deal with cults often enough,
yes,
so I have to ask: terrorists are appreciated among a group of population. That's why they do their terrorist act, right?
That's why I very specifically said if he's cut off from those people who share his ideology, which, let's be fair, a lot easier to do for a small terrorist cell than it is for the I don't know how much percentage of the American population who might sympathize with Chauvin or glorify cops in general.
So how would you go about in cutting off people's relation to that part of society?
I'm not really sure. Your question was like, do you think it'd be easier or harder to rehabilitate a police officer or a terrorist? And I said it depends upon the environment that they exist in. It might be easier to remove a terrorist from the environment that they're in that reinforces those ideas than it is to remove a police officer from that environment. Because in the case of the terrorist, it's a small group of people, and in the case of a police officer, it's a large portion of America in general.
But then you have to, weigh the obvious reason, which is if someone has the ideology to kill people, it's going to be harder to reform that person because that person, the more dig into their ideology than Chauvin, who had an act of negligence and is probably not going to ever do that again. Not going to ever
he's never going to be a police officer again, is he?
Yeah, he's not going to be a police officer again. So I feel like one's much more easier to reform than the other, right?
I do not know. It really depends upon individual factors, like I said.
But
I think there are some cases where it might be easier, some cases where it might be harder. That's why I said everybody has to be assessed on an individual basis. You can't have you can't have solid sentencing for individual crimes because basically you have to say somebody is rehabilitated when they're rehabilitated. You release them from custody when they're safe to be let out into the world, and that could be 2 years for a fucking terrorist and 20 years for a cop. It really depends on how the individual reacts and responds to whatever kind of rehabilitative processes we have in place.
So if you're saying it's going to be harder to rehabilitate, because it sounds like that's what you're saying, it's going to be harder to rehabilitate a cop than it is going to be a terrorist. I like to point this out. There's a study.
I'm not saying that.
Okay,
I'm
this
not
is
saying that. I'm saying it really depends. Okay, it could be harder to rehabilitate the terrorist than the cop. It's like it's individuals, and it depends on their ideology and circumstances and how well they respond
okay.
to whatever kind of rehabilitative programs we have. Right? You're asking me to try and make an assessment with a limited amount of fucking information. Everybody is very, very different. I've seen people go from full fucking jihadi to like white supremacist to like incel, and then into like fucking being lefty progressive in the space of like 3 years. Okay,
Okay.
I've seen that fucking happen to people.
So
all right?
this
And
so this
likewise,
won't so this
people
won't this
with
won't be
people with
so this
okay.
won't be directed towards you, Vivian. If that's not what you're saying, this won't be directed towards you. But while we're talking about rehabilitative justice, I want to point this out: a time when rehabilitative justice failed. And this is why I would be a little bit of against what Cutsleeve is saying. But the study shared case studies of some prisoners who manipulated the system, showing remorse and getting out of the longer sentences by exhibiting good behavior. One such prisoner was Usman Khan. Khan was originally arrested for his involvement in a terrorist plot. His sentence at first was indefinite. However, he was soon granted a lighter sentence due to his model behavior. Remained in prison for only 8 years after
Yeah, and then
after
came
then
out
being
and he did
released on
the
parole.
London
In the
Bridge
case
attack,
of
right?
Usan, he then at a conference entered the bathroom, came out with a vest on which had fake explosives, 2 knives taped to his hands. He killed 2 people attending the conference. It was eventually forced out of the building, and that is an example of prisoners manipulating rehabilitative justice.
Can I just
Sure,
say something
Dippy,
really
just
quick?
yeah.
Like,
you're absolutely
Uh,
okay.
That was
correct.
directed at me.
Al. In the
I
case of the Prevent program here in the United Kingdom, I have significant fucking issues with it. Right? I don't think it tracks people well. I don't think it keeps up engagement particularly well. Okay, there's a lot of issues with rehabilitative programs that already exist, but that doesn't like that doesn't discount the importance of trying to instate like rehabilitative programs that actually work. Because if Usman Khan had spent like 40 or 50 years in prison and come out and done exactly the same thing, right, it would be a different group of people that died, but it'd probably be just as many fucking people, all right? So like we can't fucking predict things with absolute perfection, but we ought to be trying for rehabilitation, unless of course you're arguing that the only moral course of action is whenever somebody commits a crime to just lock them up and throw away the key.
The only
The
course of
problem
action is
here,
I'm saying that we need to come up with a.
real quick. Sorry, I want to throw it to Lyra because I know she was trying to talk, and after that we're going to go into closing statements, starting by Whick. Okay, Lyra, go ahead.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say, like, really quick, I think we can all kind of agree that our justice system needs reform in this country, right? Like, I don't think anyone's really disagreeing with that. But I think the broader point that like Whick and Vivian have been trying to make is like you can't just copy and paste the sentencing guidelines from another country and then just apply it to our justice system without like completely reforming the entire thing from the inside to begin with, right? Like we need to completely redo all of our justice system before we can just start cutting sentencing guidelines, right? Like we can't just copy and paste like you're suggesting. There's a lot more work that has to be done first before we can get to that.
All right, and with that being said, we're going to go into closing statements, starting by Whick.
Okay, thank you. This has been an interesting. Yeah, this has been an interesting discussion. To sum up my feelings on this, I think Chauvin's sentence, to address the question, was entirely appropriate. The judge set out what I feel is reasonable criteria for why he went over the guidelines, which again, to following the guidelines is not a legal requirement for the judge. If he wanted to set an example, he would have done something much harsher. It wouldn't have been so, I don't want to say minor because 22 years isn't minor. Now, if you're asking, like, do I think Chauvin will be rehabilitated in our justice system? No, I do not think anyone is rehabilitated in our justice system, and it needs reform. And while we can look to other countries as models and try to use them as examples, to copy and paste everything that they do onto our system is foolish. It's unhelpful. And I don't think that's the way we should go. But we do have to do something because this is a continuous problem that has plagued the country for many years, and it needs to change.
All right, I'm going to throw it to Cutsleeve.
Yeah. So if it is well, since that it's the case that in Minnesota's guidelines there are, these exaggerated factors, then it is the case that legally speaking, the judge was in the right. But what I kind of thought is that if we're going to a rehabilitative justice system, we should take action to do that. We shouldn't only operate in the bounds of legality, which is why I've made the distinction legality versus morality. Legality is did he do the things in the scope of what a judge is supposed to do? And yeah, I mean, if the aggravated factors were there, I should do better research next time. But if the aggravated factors were there, legally speaking, he was in the moral justification. But morally speaking, was he in the justification? If we want to go to a rehabilitative system, then no. If you guys say that like sentencing guidelines aren't the end all be all, and then there's other steps, what I would say is sentencing guideline creates a feedback loop that broadens other prison reforms. First, you do sentencing guidelines, then you do like you cross off the asking of if you are a felon or not. Then you increase prisons or like increase the comfortability of prisons. These all have a feedback loop, but it all starts from sentencing guidelines because no matter how good you treat the prisons, no matter how good they reintegrate into society, if they're sentenced to 40, they're crazy. If they're sentenced to 40, they're beyond done in most scenarios. Sentencing guideline is the main thing. You don't want to be in prison for longer. The longer you stay in prison, the more dangerous prison is. I yield.
Thank you, muted.
Sorry, I'm muted. I'm going to pray to Pittelli. I'm a pro streamer. Don't criticize me. Pittelli, go ahead.
Okay, now.
Yeah, so I think it was appropriate. The original question, his sentencing was appropriate. Again, guidelines are just there to do just that. They're there to guide you. You don't have to take them verbatim and then apply them. And then as far as the years he was doled out, it was slightly less than what the prosecution was even seeking. It lines up with the years that for the crimes that he was gonna get in the first place. It also lines up with the other cases around the country when in terms of police officers killing people. Again, it's right by the average amount of years. And as far as the rehabilitative justice thing, the years do matter, but the years without how we integrate them back into society, the years without how they're treated in prison is it's nothing. It doesn't do anything. So, and the judge has to operate within the system he's currently presiding in. We don't have a justice system that rehabilitates people yet. So he can't just say, oh, I'm doing this, giving him 12 and a half years because I want to rehabilitate him. Okay, but that's not, you're not operating within the system that you're working in. So he can't just, that wouldn't make any sense. Also, like I said, it's not just the years. There's so much more. And with the years or without the years, if you don't have those other factors, no one's going to be rehabilitated. It doesn't matter.
All right, I'm going to pray to SprouticUs.
Okay. So I'm for a rehabilitative system. We're not anywhere close to where we need to be before we apply that. I don't want a failed rehabilitative system to take place in the United States. We need to find out a very, very good, solid way of doing it before we implement it, because otherwise we're going to end ourselves with tragedy. I think that I think I'm still sticking to what I'm saying. I think the sentence was too long, considering Minnesota. What Minnesota's put out. I think that abuse of power does require intent, although people may disagree with that. I believe abuse of power does require intent. And honestly, I think Chauvin would have been rehabilitated no matter the amount of time. Chauvin just taking away his job would have rehabilitated Chauvin, because he's got a wife, he's got kids. Taking away his job would have rehabilitated him. Taking away that position of authority. And he's not going to get that job back once he gets out of jail. So I don't think we're going to have any issues with Chauvin once he gets out of jail. Just think that, and again, the jury convicted him on unintentional second-degree murder, which means he didn't intend to kill George Floyd. That wasn't an intention. And if you're gonna say that wasn't intention, it's actually underneath the law of slander. So if you're gonna slander the person, that's fine. He wasn't found guilty of intentional murder. So if you're gonna say he did it intentionally, feel free, but you're also slandering somebody. So I yield.
All right. I'm going to throw it to Binx.
Yeah, I mostly agree about the rehabilitative justice stuff. I think we should probably like relook at our jailing system. Like for instance, I'm reading a book called Lord of the Flies right now. It's about like these people who like are bad and they get sent to this island and they work together and learn how to like social skills. I haven't finished the book. Don't spoil it for me. But yeah, maybe we should look at stuff
That's
like
the
that.
weirdest fucking. Sorry, finish the book.
No, I'm done. Okay.
All right. I'm going to throw it to Vivian.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there. Did you have more to say, friend?
No, it's fine. Oh, it's cool. I had a point that was just going to blow everyone away, but it's whatever.
Vivian, go ahead.
Oh, geez, where did he even begin? Like, it's just fucking wild to me that, like, when we're talking about a cop who murdered a fucking black dude, like, this is when the right's willing to engage on rehabilitation. Fucking amazing shit right there, guys. Love it. Also, I think it's hilarious how it's been demonstrated during this panel that like two of the major writers, at least Sprouticus and Cutsleeve, like, Cutsleeve said it himself, should have done more research before he came on or what have you, right? But it didn't take me long to like Google up these fucking things, right? I did most of the Googling that I needed to do during the panel because they're very, very easy things to find. Minnesota state statutes, sentencing guidelines, etc. Very concise documents that you can scan through and you can find the information that you need very, very quickly if you have half a fucking brain and are able to do that. And that's why we shouldn't listen to right-wingers when we're talking about these kinds of fucking subjects because they're not interested in like finding out the truth of the situation. They're interested in finding out how they can weasel out of the accusations made by the left that they don't actually give a fuck about rehabilitation and they just want to like shit on the left as much as possible. It's fucking wild to me. With regards to like what Sprouticus said about like the rehabilitative system we need to make sure it's really good or it's going to end in tragedy. Tragedy is a 44% recidivism rate in the United States. 44% of people who go into prison come out and commit more fucking crimes, right? In the UK, that's like 28% or something. And in Norway, where they really focus on rehabilitation, that's cut all the way down to 20%, right? I think it is shown that focusing on rehabilitation works. Okay, in the countries where it's done, there is a lower recidivism rate. There is less tragedy, less of the tragedy that Sprouticus is so fucking worried about. So next time you come to a panel like this, like do your fucking research or at least learn how to fucking Google. And if you can't Google during the panel, that's fine. I understand it's really confusing when I'm screaming at you and calling you a fucking idiot, but I wouldn't have to do that if you'd looked up shit beforehand. Okay, so fucking do it. All right. Jeez fucking Christ. Oh, a la Cutsleeve, I yield.
All right. I'm going to throw it to Lyra.
Yeah, so I mean, I basically already said this at the beginning, but I think that Chauvin's sentence was appropriate for the working within the bounds of our current legal system. I don't think that starting a conversation about reforming our justice system, I don't think the correct way to do that is by giving Chauvin of all fucking people a lower sentence. Like it's just ridiculous to me that you want to have this conversation now when we're talking about Derek Chauvin. Okay, guys, but yeah, if you want to have a larger conversation about prison reform, absolutely, let's have that conversation. But in terms of where we are at currently with our legal system and the case in question, I think the judge absolutely gave an appropriate sentence considering the circumstances. And that's all I've got to say on that.
All right, and HardWoodenSock.
All right, so it's nice to kind of close this out, but the sentence is appropriate when you look at all the aggravating factors. It's very simple. I don't see why we need to argue that he's going against the guidelines, but it is what it is. In our current system, it is appropriate. If you want to talk about, rehabilitative justice, I'm all ears. I've been, on board with trying to figure out reforms for the justice system for a while. But, in regards to this particular topic, it wasn't about rehabilitative justice. So, no, I mean, it's a accurate sentence and a good sentence. And but let's all be honest, he's not going to spend 22 and a half years in prison. So he's going to be out early. But yeah, no, that's kind of what I got there.
All right. And
Oh, sorry, I forgot one thing. There's no deviating from the guidelines here, okay? The judge followed the guidelines. I thought we covered,
okay.
but everybody keeps fucking saying it like it was. No, he followed the guidelines. He followed the
Bro, wait.
guidelines.
Let's
Yeah.
move into palette cleanser. Okay. Let's move into the meme topic. We had a change because all right, so the new bonus topic is usually like we do one serious topic, one fun topic in the middle, and one serious topic to finish. So we get a little palette cleanser in the middle. So what's the best / worst food, best or worst food, best of or worst fast food restaurant? All right. I'm not going to do like any like opening and everything. You can directly engage.
Okay, so
Best
the
fast
best
food or worst fast food?
So
Go
the
ahead,
best
Scott.
fast food restaurant has to be Chick-fil-A without a fucking doubt. Okay, that's the Lord's chicken. All right. So when you eat there, just know you're eating the Lord's chicken. That's the Lord's food that you're eating. It is fantastic. I love Chick-fil-A. I always will. And if my order's wrong at Chick-fil-A, I just assume that Chick-fil-A knows what's best for me, and they did it because it's better for
Okay,
me.
okay.
And the worst one, I'm gonna have to go with Taco Bell. Like that does not agree with me.
While
So,
you may enjoy taking the Lord's meat inside of you, I think that probably a better, more successful. I think the best is, I'm gonna go with it. Fast food. If we're talking fast food, McDonald's. It's classic. Everyone knows it. Everyone likes it. Sometimes they'll have 25-cent burgers, so it's good for the working class. It provides cheap food, and while it may not be healthy, it is. I'm gonna say it's contributed to my lovely beard here. So aesthetically, it's made me very pleasing.
I'm just going to jump in here and say that In-N-Out Burger is the superior fast food chain. They may be Christian and they definitely print like Bible verses on their shit, but they don't give money actively to anti-LGBTQI organizations like fucking Chick-fil-A. And, I don't know how McDonald's is doing nowadays, but they did very heavily employ the use of prison labor for their beef operations, which I don't agree with. And In-N-Out actually does pay their workers pretty damn well in comparison to most fast food places.
Yeah,
Can you imagine
Chick-fil-A
what a
actually,
sad fucking cunt you have
Chick-fil-A
to be
actually
to be
stopped
like,
those
I'm gonna go
donations.
to I'm gonna go to Chick-fil-A because I hate the gays. Like, how fucking sad do you have to be to like go and eat food simply so that you can fucking give money to people so they can fuck over gay people?
Wait. Did I say that? I'm sorry. Did I say that, Vivian? I mean, I'm curious. Did I say that?
There's a lot of folks out there who
Did I say
support
that, though?
Chick-fil-A purely for their stance on like anti-LGBT stuff.
I'm
It's
just curious.
really fucking dumb.
Raise your hand in the panel if you heard me say that.
How
Who
did we end up
cares?
talking about politics? This is supposed to be about fast food.
No, I'm not.
Chick-fil-A is
I'm not letting
delicious.
I'm not letting you cleanse your palate. I'm gonna keep shitting on Sprout until he cries and leaves.
We
all
can't
I'm not
deny
crying or
Chick-fil-A
leaving.
is
So go
delicious.
ahead. Keep doing
This
ad
is a
hominems.
public-
I'm not crying or leaving.
Chick-fil-A is delicious.
Nah.
We can't deny that. But I mean, if there
Wait,
are
Vivian,
people
what
who
are
won't
you
go
on?
to a
Wait.
certain place based
All
off
right,
of
we're
like,
Pittelli, go ahead. Sorry.
Chick-fil-A is delicious, and there are people who won't go to certain places based off of whatever type of situation or morals maybe the board of directors or the owner has. But you could play that game with just about any company. They've all done some pretty terrible things across the globe. You might find yourself short of corporations to go to purchase anything if you do enough digging on them.
Yeah, no ethical consumption under capitalism.
actually-
I completely
you
agree with
beat me
So
to
I
it,
think- I
Vivian.
actually-
But
So
I think
actually want to
there's,
point
I
out though
think
that
there's
Chick-fil-A
definitely,
stopped those
I think
donations
that's
when it came out, and they
definitely- I
weren't
think there's
donated directly
definitely-
to these
I think
organizations.
that's
They were donated to
this little boy
organizations that then
whines so
took this
much when
money
people talk
and then
over
put it
him,
to other
but yeah, he
organizations.
doesn't
Okay,
other people
So
one
I'm
at
just
a
gonna keep
time.
talking, and just because it's
This
bugging
fucking
Vivian, okay,
actual
so
crybaby.
is-
All right,
so
fuck it.
why?
Like,
Bro,
I was
TQs
in the
after
middle of
that,
a, I was in
Vivian.
the middle of a fucking
Well,
sentence.
TQs after
bro.
that, Vivian. I don't know what's happening. We were supposed to talk.
I was
I don't know.
talking and Sprout decided to interrupt me, even though he's
Chick-fil-A.
like,
So actually,
whining
Mr.
about me
Geek gave
doing
the
it
mic to
him.
me.
So
Mr.
there
Geek
is
actually gave the
actually
mic
a
to me.
No!
So
group of
I just want to
people
point out that I have the mic
that
and I'm
support,
continuing to be
like,
talking. So it's
Chick-fil-A,
fine. I'll just keep talking until I
regardless,
have
like-
the room. So
I'm
do I have the room now? Okay,
Go
so Vivian got
ahead.
muted. Thank you very much for the room. So I want to point out that Chick-fil-A actually stopped those donations, and they were donated to organizations that then moved that money to anti-LGBTQ organizations. And when that came out, when that report came out that that money was being used for anti-LGBTQ organizations, Chick-fil-A actually stopped sending money to those organizations that were moving it to anti-LGBTQ. So if you want to bring that up, that's fine. But it's been resolved, and Chick-fil-A stopped those donations.
You know they've
Ah,
done this
brilliant,
several
thank you.
times,
Okay,
right? You
so
know
I'll
that they
finish-
stopped
I'll
and then
finish
started
right
again,
now.
and then stopped and started again.
Wait, let me finish what I was gonna say. Okay, so yes, you're right. There's no ethical consumption under capitalism, and it's perfectly fine to recognize that, like, pretty much anything you're consuming, it's probably somewhere along the chain somebody's going to have been hurt and exploited by the companies involved, right? But there's definitely a distinctive difference between recognizing that and going, well, you know, I have to fucking do this shit to live, and going, I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A because they hate the gays, right? These are two very, very different things. And there's a very weird group of people out there who just go to Chick-fil-A because of their anti-LGBT views.
I do have a question. Does the donations that a corporation, a fast food chain, give make the food taste better or worse? Like, can you improve the taste and quality of your food by donating to progressives? Can you decrease it if you donate it to conservative organizations?
I mean, maybe.
You cannot.
Exactly. So who the fuck cares? Basically, like, I understand that we should hold corporations accountable and things like this, but in the spirit of, I think, this topic, which is just to fuck around and be memey, like, the worst.
No, everything serious, everything politics now.
The worst fucking place I've ever had. I was on vacation for a week in Florida just last week, and I had this. I'd never tried this place, Del Toro's. You guys heard of Del Toro's tacos? That was shit. It was overpriced. I paid $20 for probably the worst meal of my life. It's shit. Never go there.
Oh fuck! Look at that. Sprout was lying again
Was
because he
lying?
didn't
When
bother
was I lying?
googling before he
Please tell me
started
when I was
fucking
lying.
talking.
Please tell me when I was lying.
Again,
Please tell me.
again.
Please tell me.
I should
I
probably
mean,
be looking at Mr. Geek's chat
these aren't facts, right? So she's not bringing up facts. She's just saying that I'm lying. So I'm really curious if you're gonna
well,
accuse the
Chick-fil-A still
panelist of lying.
donates.
When?
Chick-fil-A
Show me.
still donates
When?
to anti-LGBT
When? Show me.
organizations.
Show me.
Yeah, it was linked in Mr. Geek's chat.
Okay, can you link it in the Discord or in the Whereby so that way I don't have to go to Mr. Geek's chat on Twitch and leave my chat?
Why didn't you go to Mr. Geek's chat? What's wrong with Mr. Geek? Do you hate
have
chat?
Twitch is open at lunch.
Chatters. Sprout fucking hates you. He doesn't want to listen to you guys. Okay?
Okay.
That's really
Well,
fucking sad. The amount
I
of
appreciate that, Mr.
scorn you
Geek.
have for Geek's audience
Actually-
when Geek's
actually
giving you a
working-
platform.
Actually
disgusting to me.
working with panelists. I love that about you, Geek. You moving that link over to Whereby so it's easier for panelists to be able to debate and actually talk about the facts instead of just saying you're lying and I linked it over here. Go find it. It's absolutely fantastic.
You could have just
Hey,
Googled
Sprout,
it. couldn't
it's
you, Sprout?
right there, buddy. Chick-fil-A's owner is newly connected to Anti-Equality Act donations published on June 3rd, 2021. I told you they've done this before. They'll stop the donations so that they can, be like, hey, we're cool with the gays again, and then get everybody eating at their restaurant again, and then they just start doing the donations.
Okay, do you have
all
a
over
link for
again.
that? Because the link that I'm seeing, I'm seeing from Vivian here just looks to be it just looks to be like a hit piece against Chick-fil-A. It doesn't give actually any facts. So it looks to just be a hit piece. But is there another source you'd like to point me out?
Sprout, look, okay. There are Here, let me teach you something. It'll be really useful in future. Okay, this is what we call source analysis. We can take a look at a source and say that it is biased, and still be able to glean meaningful information from it. Okay, we can look at the claims that are made within the document. All right. So, for example, the claim that they're still donating to certain organisations in June of this year, and you can go and search for that information. You use a search engine.
I mean, there was nothing like that. It was
like
it was a
50
hit
years
piece. It was
old.
the Esquire. It's the Esquire piece, right? So I can read it out loud, but it doesn't.
No,
give,
you don't
like,
need to
any-
read it out
any
loud.
basic
Look for the
facts.
claims that it makes, assess the bias, right? Try and work out whether it's a trustworthy document. If it's not a trustworthy document, right, even if you think it is generally, right, you should try and falsify those claims. So go and corroborate. So go and
Again,
search
it
up the
doesn't give
claim
any
on Google.
facts.
Okay,
It says
so-
announced
so
in late
if you
2019
look
it
at
would
the
stop making
article-
charitable donations. And to be fair, it did. There's no facts to this. It said
If
the
no,
literally
if
just
you
a bit
look
there
at
it
the
did.
article, it
This is what
says
you
that
get.
Chick-fil-A
This is
as
what
a
it says.
chain, as a fast food chain, stopped making those donations. However, the CEO or the owner is still making those donations, right? So it's
The
not
CEO
necessarily.
that person's actually no longer the CEO or in control of donations of the organization. So
Okay, I just want to point out that I started drinking Coke when I heard about their anti-whiteness diversity training campaign because I'm trying to get less white myself. So
that's when I started drinking
job.
Pepsi.
like, oh, that's so you decided to switch and I decided to switch the other way. And
Yeah.
so we canceled each other's votes out in that case. Okay. I think
Well,
you
man,
can
I
alright.
heard
less
Pepsi
whiteness yourself.
ended systematic racism through Caitlyn Jenner giving a cop a Pepsi. So maybe I should switch to Pepsi.
True.
All right. In and Out is
Wait, so
by
I
far.
think that
I
maybe
agree.
All right,
Don't come
fast
in and,
food.
like-
Fast food. Cutsleeve, what's your take? Best or worst fast food?
Oh, we're not talking about the okay. I think that fast food is a way to kill people. If you want the best food, one, be born to a black family. Two, go to your black family member's house if you don't have the first option, because it's just the fact that black people, especially black mothers, make better
Eat
food
poorly.
than everyone.
Eat
they
poorly
just-
because they don't have as much money, and like black kids are more likely
I
to be
don't-
malnourished
This is not
and
about
shit.
politics, Vivian.
Huh.
This is about black moms just
Wait, did Vivian just suggest that all black people are poor and don't have enough money to buy food? Like,
yeah,
is
that's
that what
exactly
Vivian
what
just
I.
suggested?
That's exactly what I said, Sprout. You're look at your giant brain comprehending words.
You just told Cutsleeve that black people eat poorly. Like, that seems to be taking the entire race and putting them saying they're poor and they eat poorly. Like that's
Yeah, no,
racist
that's definitely what I just did. Well done. You've totally
racist on
you've totally
face.
comprehended every word that I've said there. Congratulations. You're a very
Binx,
smart young
what's
man.
your take about fast food?
We'll see.
You're muted.
this is stupid.
So me?
I
Yeah, the best
not
bet-
individual.
the best fast food probably is rabbit, and the worst is turtle. That's what.
What?
Turtle
What?
is pretty slow as foods go, but slug is slower. That's all I'm saying.
What are you guys talking about?
The
I have
slowest-
no
the
idea.
slowest food,
It's the
dude.
beginning of this. I have no idea.
I think sloth is the best food. Are we
okay,
just meat
look.
animals? I think dragon is a pretty good food too. What?
Yeah, dragons
No,
burns my
the
food all the time.
dragons don't exist, Cutsleeve, you fucking idiot.
A Komodo dragon exists. What are you talking about?
Okay,
Vivian?
first-
Oh, okay,
Alright,
but,
Everyone,
okay,
chill.
fair enough. You got me. Komodo dragon. It's a pretty speedy food. I think they can reach speeds of up to like 20 something miles an hour. That's pretty fucking spooky. Nah, honestly, the best fucking fast food is a good old English fry up. Okay, get that black pudding on there and some fried onions, some bacon, sausages, beans, toast, hash browns, maybe some chips instead.
Are we talking,
Is that fucking
real
fast
bacon or
food?
Canadian bacon? We're talking real bacon or Canadian bacon?
What?
We're talking
No,
real bacon or Canadian bacon?
No. British bacon. The
British
only
bacon.
kind of fucking bacon that is actually bacon. Because American bacon is just fat, okay?
American
just-
bacon.
You
is
mean
just-
American bacon is just delicious?
It's
Yeah,
There's
amazing.
no
British
meat.
Pretty
There's
bad.
no meat in it. There's
There's
literally
meat in
no
it?
meat.
That's why it has protein, right?
It is 90% fat.
90% fat. Is that a fact?
I don't know. It's just
Straw
delicious.
man.
I love American bacon.
Yeah, 90% delicious.
Oh
if you
shit!
ask
I don't
me.
know. I don't know, Cutsleeve. Sorry, Cutsleeve. I don't know, Sprout. Am I a biased source? Oh, maybe you should assess the bias, check the claim, go Google it, and try and work it out.
I
And
just
then I'll
asked that
come
was a
back to you
fact.
with like.
I just asked that
Vivian's
as a
so
fact.
used to yelling at me that she's
Listen,
just
I'm going to
auto
grab a
saying,
drink.
"It's
Danabo is
Cutsleeve."
going to moderate while I'm away.
Wait, I said no. What the?
I don't
Wait,
care.
Sir Geek just left us without moderation. What?
Binx, moderate.
Okay, guys, riot. Let's go.
Wait, why can't I moderate?
Why are you doing
Oh my god. Well, first you've
I
got to
can't
check the
moderate.
bias and then assess.
I dropped my fucking
Um,
cigarette.
Oh, don't start a forest
did it.
fire.
I think we found the. I think that was a good conversation, right, guys?
I live in a
We went
house.
to,
I'm not
like-
going to start a forest fire in my house.
I think we came to the conclusion that Chick-fil-A
My
is the
palate is
best
cleansed.
fast
I
food
don't know about
restaurant
you.
out there.
Do we count do we count things like Quiznos or Firehouse Subs? Is that fast
Of
food? Like
course.
what?
Yeah,
are we
of course, that's fast food.
counting as fast food here? Like what's the
Something
criteria?
so something somewhere you can go in, order food, and leave. Like it's not like you have to go sit down, right? So
Like a takeout for normal
I
people, right?
I would throw Steak and Shake in there. But if you have to order to go and like wait for it, right, for an extended period of time, then I wouldn't call it fast food. Like I don't know if I call Applebee's fast food. And people can disagree with me if they want to. I don't
It
know if
has
I
to
call
have a
Chili's fast
drive-thru.
food.
There
Oh,
has to be a
drive-thru.
drive-thru.
Permission to disagree. I
If
just
Wait,
there's
there
not
has
a
to be a
drive-through, it's not fast food.
Okay, I agree with
Wait,
HardWoodenSock. There
so-
has to be a drive-through.
No, that was Pittelli.
Oh, I believe
No.
it's Pittelli. It has to be a drive-through. My bad.
All right, but Chipotle's pretty quick, right? You can run in and out of Chipotle, so but it doesn't have a drive-through. So does that
Some
count
do.
as fast food?
Some
Doesn't.
Chipotles
Wait.
do have drive-throughs.
Really?
Yeah, would you
I've
count
never
Chinese
seen that before in my
buffets
life.
as fast food? I would count Chinese buffet as fast food. Like
Yeah,
It's
what
a
about,
buffet.
like-
It's
Oh,
not
no,
fast food. It's a
No,
buffet.
not the buffet.
Well-
Maybe like a small, like little mom and pop Chinese food restaurant. You know,
what
'cause
about
you can,
what about like Panda Express? That doesn't usually have a drive-through, does it?
true. Panda
I
Express
Consider
is
that
fast
fast
food.
food.
Yeah. That's fair.
The
I
Panda
don't know.
Express by me has a drive-through.
So Panda Express is the exception, not the rule, though. So we have to look at the rule and make exceptions, right?
Yeah, but there's a bunch of
you
little
have to follow
small.
the guidelines. No deviation.
But like there's small mom and pop Chinese food restaurants that you can run in and out of, you know, like real quick, like 10 minutes or less. So I don't know. But like
know
a
what?
Chinese food buffet, like an all you can eat buffet, no, like that's where you have to like sit down and shit.
I
Ooh,
wonder
that
if
sounds
Google
fucking
defines
good.
fast food. Fast food, according to Google, is food that can be prepared quickly and easily and is sold in restaurants and snack bars as a quick meal or to be taken out. That is the definition of fast food per Google.
I don't trust Google. Can you use
Man, we could
Bing.com?
argue about which restaurant should be considered fast food all fucking day, because that's
True.
pretty vague definition.
I would say if they can get your order to you in 10 minutes or less, that's fast food.
I'd have to agree with Vivian on that one, and it feels weird saying I'm agreeing with Vivian, but yeah, I'd have to agree with Vivian.
See, my whole
Whoa.
issue with Chick-fil-A though is like the long ass line in the drive-through. You know, like every time I go there, like the line is wrapped around into the street. You know,
There's a
so
reason why it's so big.
It,
well,
all,
no,
it all
I
depends
know
on
it-
how
I know it's
fast you
good,
get you
but
through
it
the line.
ain't that good.
I don't
It's
like
the
how
Lord's
like
chicken. It's the Lord's chicken. Come on, how
I don't like how they make the
short do you
employees
expect the
say-
line to be?
I
I don't
know
like how
you
they
love
make the employees say "my pleasure" whenever you have to order. It's really
Oh,
weird. to me.
dude, my pleasure. It's hilarious.
I
Listen,
just want to
Hey.
push back against this 10-minute or less thing because I think that goes to efficiency. Like you can make a very efficient system of getting your food out to you, and I
Bro,
wouldn't consider it
it's called
fast
fast food. Of course, it has to deal with efficiency.
Oh, so you think that the only criteria is the speed? I just don't buy that. I think there's more to it. I
Fast
think that the
food.
name is deceiving in that way. I think
Alright,
it's just
so-
a colloquial term.
So if I go to Chick-fil-A and I wait in line for 30 minutes before I get my food, is that now not considered fast food anymore?
From time of ordering
Well, it's a
to
fast
getting
food
food.
restaurant because they're
Okay, so,
intending to get your food out quickly, but they might fuck up, right?
I have
They
another
might make your food
qualifier.
slowly.
It has to.
But
If
see,
it
I
has a
would-
hostess
I
or a
would say
host
this
at the
is-
door, it's not fast
Sorry,
food.
Pittelli, go ahead.
True.
But if there's a host or a hostess at the door, it's not fast food. That's another
Yep.
qualifier.
So Denny's
I'll
wouldn't be
agree with
fast
that.
food to you.
How's that a
No,
qualifier? Why?
Denny's.
What does having a fucking hostess there do to
Because
like how
it-
fast you can get your
it-
food?
it's probably a sit down restaurant. It's gonna take a little longer. Someone's gonna sit down and come to your table and
Sit
take your
down in
order.
McDonald's. What? No. What
But
if they take your
a
order
lot of those
immediately?
restaurants still have like curbside though, and I mean you could order through like, a delivery app, and
So I want the panel's opinion. Someone in my chat said Olive Garden can be considered fast food. Would
No.
anyone consider Olive Garden fast food?
It's
Get outta
gross
here.
food, but it's not fast.
yeah, I wouldn't consider it fast food, just cheap, gross food.
What the fuck is an Olive Garden?
No, their breadsticks are pretty
It's
fine.
fine
though.
Full of
dining.
olives.
It's good you
it's-
don't know what it is.
It's Italian, not Italian food. It's like they tried to do Italian, but they just epically failed at it.
I mean, it's decent,
Very,
right? If you
very
go there,
bad chain Italian restaurant in America.
I mean, that just sounds like every single fucking restaurant I've been to in America. Like, all your restaurants are fucking terrible. All of them are like cheap knockoffs of random ethnic food.
Yeah, if you go to the chain ones, yeah, you got to go to the
Taco Bell,
privately owned
Chick-fil-A,
places.
like, all of it. It's just like,
so,
yeah, here's a
Vivian-
random culture's food. I'm gonna make
So
cheap
Vivian,
shit.
if you ever come back to America, you need to find the hole in the wall restaurant that looks like it's nothing. Okay, then you need to go in and order food there, and you might be surprised. Just find the hole in the wall restaurant.
I mean, a lot of times the ugliest places, like probably with the most health code violations, probably have the best food. You know, not gonna lie. like there, you walk in there and you're like, wow, this place is disgusting, and then you take a bite of their food and you're like, this is incredible. Until later on that night, then it comes back at you.
So there's definitely something to be said about that, right? Like I live in Texas, and by far the best Mexican food restaurants are, just little mom and pop, little Mexican restaurants. The menus are in Spanish because fuck you, and they're, that's the best food. That's the best Mexican food you can get.
Oh yeah, the most legitimate for sure, and probably
America has the
too.
best, most ethnically diverse food selection in the world. There's no other
I
country where you
mean,
can
yeah,
get
but you've
that.
like homogenized it all and like made it all taste like rubber.
You've only
No,
looked
no,
at
no, no,
examples
because it
you've
depends
listed
where you're at.
British,
for fast
though.
food. If all you
Oh,
go
no.
to is homogenized food chains, then yes, I can see how you have that opinion. But they're quite a diverse selection. Like, again, I'm in Florida. I went to the Taste of India, which was a Indian-owned restaurant. It's sit down. It wasn't fast food at all, but it was great. And you can get very authentic.
We have those on
Indian
every fucking
thing.
corner. There's like 20 of those restaurants in pretty much every fucking town in the United Kingdom.
Okay.
I'm not even joking. I'm just saying.
Well, I
right?
believe you.
That for
I just
you
don't-
is like a
don't
fucking
see how that's
rarity.
a-
You're like authentic Indian food. Fucking wow. We're just like, yeah, Friday night. Like,
Okay, but I
don't know.
gotta say something. There's not much that can beat Italian desserts. Like Italian desserts are top. They top the dessert.
I would
What's
agree.
What
The
about
only one that
Greek
comes close is
desserts?
French.
Greek
Italian
desserts are
dessert.
hella dope.
The French can do some good dessert pastries, but Italian
best?
desserts are the best.
what's the best Italian dessert, Sprout? What's your favorite?
Ooh, you're gonna kill me there, aren't you? Oh, I have to pick a favorite Italian dessert.
Watch him say tiramisu or some fuck. Come on, what is it?
Tiramisu.
Tiramisu
Really?
is delicious. Okay, let's not act like it's not.
Let's not act like it's proper cooking either. Come on, Sprout. You
I'm
can
trying
do
to
this.
think. There's a lot of Italian desserts. I'm Italian, so I have Italian family, so they cook a lot of different Italian desserts. I'm trying to think of which one's the best because there's so many. So give me
Think,
a second.
Sprout. Think. Think,
I mean,
man.
I really like
Red
gelato.
wire, blue wire.
So I
Which
really
one?
like
Come on.
gelato. I really like gelato. I'll settle there. I really like gelato.
Gelato.
I just want to say
That's
it's
your
very
fucking
cool.
answer.
I was thinking
I
to
really
be
like
ranking
gelato,
and
yeah.
stacking our favorites like this, to be ranking things is in some sort of hierarchy or a pecking order, and I just like to point that out to the panel.
Wick, fuck you. Look.
And of course you have really
Italian
good
desserts.
examples because
Italian
you've colonized
desserts are
them
hot
and ruled
garbage.
them for quite a long
Of course,
time.
someone
So,
from the
yeah.
UK is gonna say that, right? Someone from the UK is gonna say Italian desserts are hot garbage, right?
You listed gelato as like the best fucking.
I'm saying I like gelato, right? So I
Isn't the
really like
UK known
gelato.
for like
Am
the
I allowed to
worst
have taste
cuisine
buds?
in the world?
Yeah.
Doesn't the English they're just terrible at cooking, and that's why they all go to the Indian restaurants because The food
I'm
there
sorry,
is
Mr. fucking Kraft
horrible.
mac and cheese. At least we fucking cook out of real fucking food instead of cardboard goddamn packets.
Well, this
Right?
isn't.
but it's
I'm
Give
so
me
not-
that
bland.
fucking
No, no, no.
bullshit.
It's
And
not the
actually, I'll have
American
you know, no, some of the world's
beauty
most
of
famous,
America is the
some of
fact
the
that
world's
all of
most
these
famous
ethnic.
chefs are fucking
No, no, no,
English,
no.
aren't they? You guys sit there in the United Kingdom watching Gordon Ramsay, so don't give me that cunting shite. I haven't fucking watched an American chef on British TV. When was the last time that happened? Because you guys don't have proper fucking
But he's
food.
not.
I
He's
mean,
not cooking
I'm
English
all
cuisine.
French
He's cooking
and
all
fuck-
types of ethnic cuisine besides English cuisine.
What are you talking about? We are a melting pot over here. Okay, we have our cuisine is a fusion of dishes from all over the empire. I mean,
I don't know.
colonies. I
Oh,
mean,
it's America,
Commonwealth.
and
Little Freudian
England.
slip there.
And
Yeah.
England spent how long colonizing the fucking world for spices, and then proceeded to
Yeah,
put none of it on their own food?
What? No,
What's
we
up with
use
that?
it. No, we use it all the time. I don't know where this like perception of American food, of British food, sorry, as being like bland comes from. Like I've seen your roast dinners, for example, right? We have a roast dinner pretty much every fucking Sunday, and that shit will be covered in garlic and rosemary and thyme and fucking all sorts of shit. Okay,
Yeah,
we
but your restaurants taste
love
like
our
shit.
herbs and spices. We absolutely love our herbs and spices.
I
Who's
just
hurt?
think in
Geek, are you
America,
confused? Are you
we
confused how we got here,
have a
Geek?
wide variety of different ethnic restaurants. I cannot think of a single American restaurant that is advertises itself as authentic English cuisine. Just saying. So the market is
I
spoken.
can.
No, there's
You're right.
zero.
If you want, no, okay. Authentic English restaurants do fucking exist, but there's a widespread bigotry against British people in the United States, and I understand that you might have a perception of our
I mean,
food as
is,
not being all
is
that
this
nice.
a power play
But
there? Are we-
No.
let's be fair. Let's be fair. Your favorites, right? The things that you really fucking love. Okay, what you put out on your table for Thanksgiving dinner. That shit came from here, bitch. That shit came
Wait,
from
wait, wait,
England.
wait, wait, wait.
We
wait,
have that
wait,
shit
wait.
every fucking
Wait.
Sunday.
Turkey came from England?
No, roast dinners, my friend, were carried over from Europe to the United States. All
And you
right.
think we have
Your
roast
fucking
dinners for
roast
Thanksgiving?
potatoes and- What? Sorry, do you not roast your turkey and have like roast potatoes and fucking all kinds of shit with it?
I mean, so is roasting just a British thing? Because I'm pretty sure roasting's
No,
not
I'm pretty
just
sure
a British thing.
I'm pretty sure most countries have done that. I'm just saying.
Oh, okay.
We have
So
our
yeah,
Sunday.
so it's
We have our
so it's
Sunday
not just
roast.
you,
Okay?
right? It didn't just come from Britain. So you guys can't just own the term roasting.
Okay, fine.
Yo,
We
you
got-
all,
we
you all
got-
ever had a mayo turkey? I cooked a mayo turkey last Thanksgiving.
A mayo?
That
What the fuck
sounds
is a
fat.
mayo
What the hell is
turkey?
a
Horrible.
mayo turkey?
Okay, let me explain a
mayo
mayo
That sounds like
turkey
the
for everybody who
whitest
don't
shit
know.
I've ever heard.
It
I just
does-
said.
it does.
Well, why do you think I'm drinking my anti-whiteness Coke so I can be less white? But regardless, like mayo turkey, all it is simple as fuck to do. You take a bunch of mayo, you put spices in the mayo
It's
and
gonna
things like
do it.
that, and you spread it all over the turkey, inside and
Yeah,
out.
and then you cook it.
Okay, no.
Why would you do that to a turkey?
No. That's it. That's
Why?
where I draw the line. I'm sorry. We're moving on.
That's fucking horrible, Wick.
That's
What the fuck is wrong?
We're moving on.
It's really
No,
good. It's really
Hey,
good.
hey. Let me just
I
note,
d-
there was an American who just fucking said that, okay? You wouldn't catch that shit coming out of a British person's mouth because we know food.
No, the oil
No.
helps the skin get really.
Next topic. That's all I have to say.
Jesus fucking Christ, you and your fucking mayo turkey. And Americans will
No,
deep fry them. They'll
I
take
don't
it,
even
they'll
want
take
to
a
hear
turkey,
the.
take a
No,
turkey,
no,
just
no, no,
dip
no,
it
no,
in
no,
a
no, no,
vat
no.
of oil and cook.
Have you
That's
ever
it.
had
That's
a
the
deep fried
Thanksgiving
turkey though?
I don't want to
fucking
put the word
disgusting.
mayo
No,
and
it's
turkey
delicious.
in the same sentence. We're moving on. Next topic. Has the Republican Party turned fascist? Is it
Oh,
now
Jesus fucking
is it
Christ.
now the most dangerous threat in the world?
Wait. Before you go on to the next topic, we need to show for a bit. So, if anybody in the audience is enjoying the show, please drop a sub to Mr. Geek. He hates this panel right now and he doesn't want to be here. So, the least you could do is pay him to be here. Now, if you want to be on this show yourself, you need to join my Discord. I'm going to post it in chat. Click the link, go to the booking and recruitment section, and put your name in any of the sections, and I may drag you in. That's how most of the people here got in. Apart from Viv, who is the star guest, of course. One last thing. Go to shellshockcbd.com and enter code DANABO for 10% off all CBD products. Sprouticus, have you got them with you? Have you got your bomb drops?
I got my bomb drops. Yeah.
You got your bomb drops? All right.
Yep. There we go.
There we go. Shellshockcbd.com. Enter code DANABO. 10% off all purchases. All right. Thanks, Geek.
I'll actually take some, so I'm probably gonna need it for this next
Yeah, this should be a fun
topic.
one. Yeah. Enjoy.
Yeah. And yeah, and on top of that, if you go on Shell Shock, you support veterans, so you know, two birds, one stone. Anyway, so yeah, next topic. After this god awful take, has the Republican Party turned fascist? Is it now the most dangerous threat in the world? And we're going to start with the Sproticus.
I would say no. The Republican Party has not turned fascist. Actually, there's a large majority of. I don't want to say large majority. There's a large percentage of Republicans that actually don't want Trump to run in 2024. They actually want Ron DeSantis to run in 2024. I know Trump's going to be brought up a lot. I also do want to bring up that the definition of fascist has widely changed since the common definition has widely changed since before Trump, since until after Trump, to become more of a right wing only thing. It's not considered a right wing only thing. It can happen by both parties. But needless to say, no, I don't think the Republican has become fascist. And to continue that story, I also believe that it's not the most dangerous threat in the world, and that's a little bit outlandish that that's even a question. When we're referring to ISIS, when we're referring to China doing what it does to its citizens, when we're referring to Russia saying that Republicans are the most dangerous threat in the world, is wildly outlandish.
All right, I'm going to throw it to Lyra.
So I don't think that like the Republican Party as it exists in America is like fascist, 100% fascist. I think they're definitely okay with some policy positions that are a little fashy for sure. And I do think that conservatism in general can lead down the sort of alt-right white nationalist pipeline very easily. It's very easily for someone to agree with conservative policy positions and then take that sort of to its logical conclusion and get further and further dragged down into things like white nationalism. And I think the Republican Party isn't necessarily the greatest threat. I think actual fascists are the greatest threat. But is it helping any? Absolutely not.
All right, I'm going to throw it to Binx.
Yeah, I think. Wait, am I on? Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of a lot of Democrats look down on like Crocs and wife beaters, but I think they have their own place, and at the end of the day, I think the Republican Party does have pretty good fashion.
All right, I'm going to throw it to Cutsleeve.
Cutsleeve's dying. Give him a second.
All right.
So okay, I don't think the Republican Party is it's one not fascist. Even if there are some people in the Republican Party that are fascist, specifically alluding to the January 6th riot, that isn't indicative of the whole Republican Party. It's not indicative of the legislation we pass. These things just aren't fascist, and it's not the biggest threat to the democracy. I think the biggest threat to democracy is big tech censorship. I think big tech in it helps the establishment, and the establishment always oppresses those who aren't in the establishment. Their best interest is keeping themselves in power, and they'll do anything to keep themselves in power, especially to get rid of democracy to keep themselves in power. And big tech is one of those ways. They censor people like in the COVID lab leak theories, where in 2020, people, highly scientific doctors were discovering if COVID came from a lab, and big tech censored that because it wasn't in their best interest. But now in 2021, Biden decides to reopen the investigation, and all of a sudden it's okay to have these theories again. These big tech censorships are the biggest threat to our democracy because, one, they're anti-democratic by nature. It doesn't let the free place market of ideas sprout or whatever. And only with the ideas clashing can we get the best interpretation of democracy. If we don't let our ideas and communications out there, then how do we know which one to vote for if everything's not being said to light? That's what I think the biggest threat to democracy is. It's the establishment wanting to keep its power. As soon as the establishment doesn't like democracy, that's when it's in trouble. Are you?
All right. I'm going to throw it to Pittelli.
Yeah, so I don't think the Republican Party's stand is fascist, but they definitely under Trump have taken a more authoritarian lean, and there is a difference between just an authoritarian and a fascist regime. The Republican electorate, they were ripe towards a move to an authoritarian leader, and we've seen that with Trump. We've seen that through his presidency. We saw it through after his presidency. We still see it in polling. So are they fascist? I would say no. They are not that far gone yet, but they definitely are leaning authoritarian wise. And as far as the most dangerous in the world, I would say no. But again, a danger also implies how much power one has to endanger others. So when you're talking about, like Spartacus mentioned ISIS. ISIS is obviously more vile and awful, but are they in a position with as much power as the GOP? No, because the GOP is the second largest party or the first largest party in the most powerful country in the world. So danger also implies how much you can actually put others in danger. But I would still say no, they're not the most dangerous, just because they haven't fully gone fasci yet, but they are authoritarian under Trump by quite a bit.
All right, I'm going to throw it to Vivian. You're muted.
You're
I
muted.
think.
Move on.
Okay, I will come back to you later. Whick.
Okay, so yes, this article I feel was dumb, and I'm not going to mince words. It was a dumb article. Now it points out some real threats that the Republican, as Pittelli mentioned, they're having a more authoritarian kind of arc right now. They're implementing or trying to implement anti-democratic policies, but to pretend somehow that they are the worst threat facing the world when we have so many other threats, we have so many other problems, to pretend and to act like this is somehow the greatest threat to mankind is asinine. It's silly. It's dumb, and it makes anyone who like believes it dumb. I felt dumber just reading the article. You cannot pretend things like this. The greatest threat to the world right now is probably affluence, is probably overconsumption, and we're killing our environment. Another huge threat that is facing the world right now, and especially America, is overpolarization. And this article directly contributes to it. When you have
Fuck off.
when you cannot like talk to the other side without calling them a fascist, or say that, oh, they're trying to kill everyone, oh look, and go into this childish, and it's childish, this childish rhetoric that it prevents us from talking to each other. And when you stop talking, the only response you have is threats, violence, and nothing gets done. So that's, yeah, the article is dumb. It's no other way to say it.
Okay.
Wait.
All right. Can I go?
Did
Sorry,
I forget
Whick,
anyone? HardWoodenSock, yeah. I knew sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Do you want Viv to do her opening first, or
No. Sorry. Never mind. I was out of it for a sec. Viva, go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
don't mind either way. Like, yeah. Sorry for interrupting, Wick. I was just I was testing my mic.
It's fine.
Shit. Yeah. No. I mean, it's difficult to work out which kind of angle to come at this from. I mean, I don't think like right now, that the Republican Party are the greatest threat in the world. I think they could potentially end up manifesting into the greatest threat to the world eventually. I think we really have to look at trends, right? So, some almost 30% of the Republican voter base believes in the central tenet of the QAnon conspiracy theory, right? That's really fucking creepy. The central tenet being that, there's a secret cabal of elites trafficking children that are in control of the world government, etc. Right? Like literal fucking neo-Nazi shit, right? This is just repackaged blood libel. It's spooky that like 30% of the base believes that. That's not saying 30% of the base are actual neo-Nazis. It's just that they, happen to believe in a conspiracy theory that is very neo-Nazi oriented. And if we look at the 2020 election, I think there were 20-something candidates for the 2020 election, right? Congressional candidates that support that had expressed some support for QAnon. Of those, 2 of those made it into the highest office, and I think a further 6 or so got into local legislatures. Right, you got Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert in the halls of Congress right now, and a decent amount in local state legislatures. And already for 2022, we have I think it's up to like 34 or something. I haven't checked recently. But 34 candidates that have expressed QAnon sympathies running for office. Now, I think we won't be able to tell fully which way the wind is blowing until those 22 elections. I think that those are that's going to be a pretty pivotal point for us to be able to assess the direction that GOP is going in regards to embracing this kind of like batshit crazy conspiracism. I think they're leaning towards it. I think there's a significant amount of senators who are quite happy paying lip service to it. I think the conservative media has pretty much bought into a lot of this stuff and is helping to promote it. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a significant amount of them get in, but I would be really, really happy to be wrong. Okay. The problem with this is if you get enough of those people in government, then they start being able to influence policy in a major way, right? One Marjorie Taylor Greene, spooky, fucked up, but ultimately not going to be able to do an awful lot, right? 20, 30, 40 Marjorie Taylor Greenes, now you're really fucking spooked, right? Because you've got people who believe that like Jewish space lasers are responsible for California wildfires. And not only do they believe that, you have people like General Michael Flynn who are literally calling for like a military coup of the government, right? The overthrow of democracy, which I think, regardless of your views on whether or not like QAnon is a fascist conspiracy theory, it is. But if you don't believe me on that, you would be worried about like the overthrow of democracy through a military coup, I think. And if you get enough people in Congress who want that kind of thing, it can happen, you know? So I don't think right now, but I think we're on a very, very dangerous path. And I think 2022 will be a good time for us to assess just how quickly we're moving down that path, if at all.
All right, and I'm going to throw it to HardWoodenSock.
All right, so I don't think the Republican Party is necessarily fascist. You know, I did look up like the 14, you know, like the 14 characteristics of fascism, right? And you can apply some of them to both sides, both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. So it's kind of like, well, if we're going to call the Republican Party fascist, then, well, we better call the Democrat Party, you know, fascist as well. So it's kind of like, you know, I don't think they're the biggest threat to society, you know, at all. I think that some of the Republican, you know, House of Reps representatives are like do have damaging rhetoric and kind of do have authoritarian, you know, leanings, which I think we need to kind of expel from the Republican Party. You know, but I also agree with Whick, like the article was just very, very dumb, and it doesn't help with the hyperpolarization that our society currently has. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
So everybody,
All right. I think that is. So yeah, the floor is yours.
The 14 points that you're talking about, I assume, are from Umberto Eco's essay on Earth fascism. They are 14 characteristics that are commonly observed in fascist governments of the past, right? So like Mussolini, Hitler. I forget which ones he analyzed there, but I think it was like Mussolini, Franco, Hitler, right? And so it's not a checklist to go down and go, oh, well, have you expressed these attributes, then we can call you a fascist. It's an analysis of how fascism tends to be built and how it comes into being, right? I don't rely on that for a definition of fascism. I think a very simple definition of fascism is palingenetic ultranationalism with a focus on purifying the peoples that it protects, right? The in-group, which I refer to as the Volk for obvious reasons, of undesirable traits based on immutable characteristics and sometimes religious sensibilities, if we're talking in the case of ISIS or whatever. So I think that's a really, really simple and easy definition for a lot of people to follow. I think the only thing people get a little bit confused over is the palingenetic, right? The palingenetic myth. And the palingenetic myth is something that is common to pretty much all fascist movements, is the idea that there was some sort of golden age before that we need to return to. The idea that society has fallen, has been is degenerating through the things that we're doing, and then of course that need for the purification of the Volk to bring about a new golden age, right? That is like it was before at some point. So that's the only bit I feel it really needs explaining from that definition. But yeah, I would say that that's a much better definition than Umberto Eco's 14 points go down the checklist, or does it? It's a really silly way of kind of looking at things, because we're talking about a form of political behavior rather than something that you can just check off.
I just want to say that it's important to kind of keep an eye out, be observant, to be wary and to be watchful, because there's always a chance, as Vivian says, that there can be indicators that a party or a group of individuals, in power, are heading down a route or a route. I don't know how else I can say it. That might end up in a very fascist and very kind of bad outcomes might come from that. But it's not. It doesn't help when you simply throw around this term fascism loosely, like everything you don't like is fascism, and it's really lost its meaning in modern discourse, I feel. And I think
So
that's
I mean, I don't care about it losing its meaning, right? Like if we look at the academic, if we look
Where's
at the academic understanding from like the vast majority of scholars, I think that my definition fits pretty well, right? We can talk
sure.
about
I'm not saying it doesn't.
the characteristics of a fascist.
But using it in a article that's not an academic article, this isn't a scholarly.
Okay. I'm not trying to. I'm saying that I think that we can apply this definition to the GOP, and we can see where it does kind of apply, right?
I would like to
So if
point
we
out-
talk about like the
sorry.
palingenetic myth, that's fucking obvious that the GOP follows that. If we talk about being anti-democratic, I think we could have a decent conversation about that. But I think we would understand that like the 2020 election was definitely sort of like a watershed moment in just how undemocratic, anti-democratic the GOP are willing to be to retain power, right? Ultranationalism, don't think we need to argue about that. That's pretty fucking obvious. And then the desire to like purify the Volk of undesirable characteristics. I think we've seen quite a lot of that from the GOP in terms of like attempting to disenfranchise Black people, doing this dumb fuck culture war shit around critical race theory right now, the sweeping legislation against trans people. I have enough fucking examples of the GOP trying to essentially purge or suppress people because of their immutable characteristics, because they are not pure enough for the American nation that they revere so much. So I don't think that it's flippant to like throw out the word fascist when we're talking about the GOP.
Well, when we
I think
talk
saying
about
that the GOP expresses
ultranationalism, for
alarmingly
example.
fascist behavior, I think that is a reasonable fear.
So I mean, I'd like to point out that there's people that are close to fascism on both sides. This isn't just a GOP thing, and to say it's just a GOP thing is quite disingenuous. Antifa is one of the most fascist organizations you have inside of America. Because Antifa is quite literally the definition of fascism. If you don't agree with me, then you might as well be dead.
No. Don't fucking add on. Why?
No, so
what
I mean,
traits do they
I
express?
just pointed out. So I'm going to continue with
what traits do they
so
express?
there's close
what
to
behaviors do
fascists
they
on
engage
both.
in
I mean,
that are fascist?
this is amazing because I didn't interrupt you and continue interrupting you when
well,
I realized
you
you
made
were
a
still
claim
talking.
that it's like
I mean,
wrong.
it's just cool. I mean, you made claims that are wrong too, but did I say
you don't want to? You don't want to support your claims?
I mean, no, I'm just cool. I mean, I'd like moderation to come in.
Go ahead, Vivian.
All right, thank you very much. So with that being said, I think there's fascists on both sides, or at least close to fascists on both sides. We can talk about Antifa. We can talk about big tech censoring of the right. We can talk about pretty much anything we want to. It's on both sides, but to make the jump from here to there to say that the Republicans are the most dangerous threat to the world, which I think was lost by a couple people. They started saying the most dangerous threat to democracy. It's not just to democracy. It was to the world. That was the claim. And I think the CCP or Russia is a much bigger threat to the world than Republicans will ever be. And that's just where I'll stand. I mean, you can question me now that I'm done talking, but
Okay,
after having a
cool.
monologue, it's
So-
kind of funny to interrupt somebody else.
Okay, cool. So the reason I had a monologue is because I think it's really, really important when we accuse somebody of being fascist or holding fascist beliefs or expressing fascist behavior to support that claim with evidence, right? So I was running through the behaviors, right, and the beliefs that Republicans express that I think make it appropriate to make the statement that the GOP has expressed alarmingly fascist behavior in recent times, right? So when you say that Antifa is the very definition of fascist,
I didn't say that.
what? No, that's
You did.
Yeah,
You did say
those
that.
were
I didn't say
your-
no. I did
those
not
were
say
your
it was a definition. I did not say
actual
Antifa was definition of fascist, Wick. And if people want to
You
go back to
did-
watch the VOD,
You
that is
can
not what I
rewind it.
said.
Let this
That's not what I said. Go watch
I
the
quoted
VOD.
you
Go watch the VOD. I
verbatim.
did not say it was the definition of fascist.
Okay, I
He just
quoted
said
you
it falls
verbatim,
under
but
the
it doesn't.
category
but
of fascism. He didn't say
But
it
it
was the
doesn't. It
definition
doesn't.
of
It doesn't matter. I think everybody on this panel would recognize that you made the claim that Antifa were fascist, right? So I would like to ask you, what traits and behaviors do you think that anti-fascists engage in that mean that they are fascist?
Antifa would rather have people dead if they don't believe in what they believe. If you don't believe in their espoused beliefs, they'd rather have you dead. That is what I would consider fascist about Antifa.
So how many
Uh,
murders have Antifa committed exactly?
That would be
Wait,
hard to
it
count.
doesn't have to be.
I mean, I
Wait,
can
wait.
look
What
it up, but
does
that'd be
have
hard to
be
count.
murdered? Like, yeah, burning
like
down
during
buildings
World War
like,
II. To be
is a
fair,
form of
Antifa doesn't
still in the
matter. They're not they're not a political party. We're talking about the GOP.
It's an
Like,
ideology, right?
Wait,
No, I
no,
don't
right,
care.
but,
I
but,
want you to
right, but we're
know
talking about
this
the
is
GOP.
important.
They are
Look,
literally
listen, look.
in.
This
They're,
is
the
they
question
are
is
the,
like,
because
the,
I
what
the
don't
political
think
party?
Okay,
Wait,
okay,
the
okay.
question-
One at a time, please.
this is
So
important.
Cutsleeve, go
Wait,
ahead,
what
and
political-
Pittelli after.
Is it? What did you say?
Cutsleeve, go ahead, Pittelli after.
Yeah, the question didn't. Just real quick, the question didn't say like what political party is the biggest threat to democracy. The question just said what is the biggest threat to democracy. So it's totally valid for Sprouticus to bring up like Antifa as a threat to democracy, and also he's not saying it's the biggest threat. He's just saying it is fascist. And if you guys want to go down that road, I would love to hear the conversation. But it's totally valid to say for Sprouticus to say that like Antifa
No,
is fascist. If you don't
it's
believe,
not. It's not without
if you don't
providing evidence or reasoning.
Sorry.
if you don't believe in what they say, they like burn down your building. They like do like arsonist things. And to what Lyra said, I don't think you have to explicitly kill people, even though I do think there's like body counts to these riots. I don't think you have to explicitly kill people to be anti-democratic. So those are I don't have a strong position on this though.
The reason I said that is because Sprout was talking about how they want to kill, and Antifa wants to kill anyone who disagrees
okay.
with them.
And I said they would rather have
I've-
them dead.
Pittelli,
Okay,
go
all
ahead.
right. All right,
Okay.
fair enough. I
Okay.
don't know why we're talking about Antifa in
que-
the first place.
the
when we're supposed to
question
be
is- the
discussing
question
the
was-
GOP.
Because the
Pittelli,
right
no,
ones
no, no,
to-
no. I'm sorry. Pittelli, go ahead.
It is the case because the question reads: has the Republican Party turned fascist? Is it now the most dangerous threat in the world? Is it? It is referring to the Republican Party. So Antifa has nothing to do with this conversation. Bringing it up is a complete red herring. Has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And one of the key components of fascism, or the tenets as well, is that physical harm, force, is a legitimate part of politics. That is one of the key things that you see a lot of fascist regimes. If you look back to Mussolini, if you look back to the Nazis, that physical harm is a legitimate part of politics. You have the black shirts, you have the Nazi stormtroopers, and then it's not entirely the same thing, but you just had the president of the United States egg on an insurrection with violence, call them like, he used like some sort of endearing term when he was talking about them, telling them to go home and they're patriots, I think he called them. When he's seen them attack the Capitol building, build gallows out front, chant "Hang Mike Pence," and he is in a way endorsing physical harm as a legitimate part of politics. And he was just the
talking about
president
the
of the
president anymore.
GOP.
I mean, Patel, you can call it a red herring if you want to
Which-
call it a red herring. That I'm sorry.
All right, Sprouticus, I'm going to let you respond after that. Whick.
Okay. So you can. I did not say that. So you can continue to say that. I didn't say that it was a definition of fascism.
We've
So
got it
with that
fucking
being
clipped.
said,
You should watch that clip.
okay.
Sprout.
Well, you know what? All right, I'm gonna continue. Besides the distraction there, so it's not a red herring. In fact, we're talking about the Republican Party, and we're talking about how has the Republican Party become fascist, and is it the most dangerous? Is it the most dangerous threat to the world? And what I was stating, Pittelli, if you want me to restate what I was stating, that way you have a deeper understanding of it, is that I was saying no, and I was saying if we're gonna talk about fascism in America, as in the Republican parties in America, right? Which is what this was written about, was the Republican Party in America. If we're going to talk about that, there are people that are close to fascist on both sides, which is what I stated. That was stated. Go back, watch the VOD. With that being said, I brought up Antifa as an example of fascism on the left.
That's the literal definition
So,
of fascism.
I
That's
was,
what you
I
said.
did.
Yeah.
Are you done? I'm just curious.
I mean, that's what you said, right?
I mean, are you
Antifa
done?
is the
Are you
literal
done?
definition of fascism.
No, it's okay. I'll wait. I'll wait till you're done. We'll just waste time.
Oh,
on the
okay. I
panel.
mean, if you want to take a step back, that's perfectly reasonable because
wait
I
till
don't
you're
think you
done.
actually know
Okay.
what the definition of fascism is, which is why I pressed you on it. I don't think you're in a place to evaluate whether or not the GOP is fascist and how much of a threat they pose because you can't tell me what the definition of fascism is. You think fascism is sectarian violence. A sectarian violence erupts among like many different groups, many of which I wouldn't call fascist. Right? Fascism is a specific form of political behavior that comes with an ideology. Okay, and I explained what I think is a really good definition of fascism. Now you can give me an alternate definition. We can discuss that maybe, right? But I don't think you have a good definition. You're like fascism when somebody like doesn't agree with me. Like fuck off. That's nonsense, mate. That's not fascism.
So ignoring
All right,
Vivian, I'm going to
Sproticus
continue.
finish,
I'm going
and
to continue
after
to take
that,
my
Whick.
time. So ignoring Vivian because she decided to rudely interrupt when I was talking. I'm going to
cry
resume my
about it.
time. Okay, you done? I'll wait. You're done?
No.
Can you mute
okay.
her then? What are you going to do, Mr. Geek? Because it continues to happen.
I mean, if you're not going to
I'm going
engage,
to
then
finish
engage.
your point and okay. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I'd like to finish my point uninterrupted by a different panelist. With that being said, I brought up Antifa as a point on the left, Pittelli. So I was saying that there was people who are close to fascist on both sides, and I brought up Antifa on the left. Now the VOD that Vivian so lovely clipped. And I said that Antifa would rather have people dead that don't agree with them. And then I went on to say, which is the literal definition of fascism. I did not say that Antifa was the literal definition of fascism. I said Antifa was fascist. It would be insane for me to take a group and say they're the literal definition, because then that would mean that I have to look it up in the dictionary and the definition be Antifa. Right. So if we look at what I said in the spot that I said it within the context, instead of ripping it out of context, we can discuss what happened and why I said that. But that's what happened, and I'll yield there.
Okay,
All
but
right,
you
Whick,
did
go
say-
ahead.
You did
Whick,
say that.
Whick, go ahead.
I didn't say Antifa
I
was the
honestly,
definition.
this is devolving into yes, huh, nuh-uh, and I want to get past that a little bit, and I want to talk about like,
We have the clip though, Wick. Why is
no,
he
I
lying?
agree with you. I agree with you. I just don't.
It's
He's not going to
it's
change his mind.
ridiculous.
We're not going to persuade him. Let's just move on. Let's get to something else. Let's move the topic forward a little bit.
How can
We
how
don't
can
need
we
to.
move it forward if people don't understand what the definition of fascism is? Like, surely we need to define fascism before we can answer the question:
Right.
is the GOP fascist?
Can we go around and ask everyone their definition
Yeah.
of fascism? See if we're on
Yeah,
the same page.
Sproticus.
That would be great.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to.
Alright.
Most of you guys agree. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
we can go around. I think that'll be
Let's continue. The reason why I think that this is such a bad discussion. It's a bad topic, and no offense to whoever chose the topic, but this is a bad topic because it throws out this word that as Vivian so wisely pointed out, how can we have this discussion if we all have our own proprietary definition of what fascism is? And no one really understands each other. No one really understands what the other person is trying to say or trying to mean. So let's talk about if the Republican Party is the greatest threat to the world. I'd like to kind of move it on to that thing. Now we can talk about the democratic system that we have in America and how that the Republicans are putting forth legislation in many states that are anti-democratic in nature. And I think that is a really big concern. That is something we have to address. And we have to look at it and we have to see what kind of knockoff effects this is going to have in the future. And we can attack it there. We don't need to bring fascism into discussion at all to attack this point. And I think that the reason they're trying to pass forth these put forth this legislation because quite simply it will help them retain power, but it is anti-democratic, and that is bad, and we need to stop it. We need to let people know what is going on, explain why it is bad, and get through it that way. It's not helpful to start name calling. It's not helpful to say not only are they anti-democratic, but they're also doing it because they're evil racists. I don't think that's helpful at all, because people put their back up. People think, well, no, I'm not that. That's not what I want here. In a lot of cases, the Republican Party, these people have been lied to. These people have been lied to. They have believed false information. They have been miseducated, and their intention is not what we ascribe to it. And so if we ever want to move past this, we have to stop ascribing this intention to people that we've never met, we don't know, and we could just say, hey, your policy is going to be harmful, here's why. That's all I want to say.
So I completely disagree, because so what you're describing, the phenomena of people being unable to define fascism, even though it's been a threat in the world consistently, right, since the early 20th century at least, okay, is a direct function of fascists attempting to muddy the waters. And I think educating people on what fascism is, what it looks like, how it forms, etc., is extremely fucking important, especially when we're seeing the rise of it in multiple countries throughout Europe and the United States.
To do that.
Well, I think a panel like this is the place to show that certain people who want to call things fascist don't actually have a fucking clue what they're talking about, and in fact that this phenomenon does not exist purely on the left, but it's actually much more prevalent on the right, because the right has a much more incentive, right, to muddy the waters when it comes to fascism, because it spends so much time shaking hands with it, right? So when Sprouticus says Antifa is fascist, what he's doing is he's giving cover to actual fucking fascists who are on his side, who he chills with, people like fucking Ankar, who spends time.
I don't chill with Ankar. Actually, if you ask Ankar, we're not friends. So, with that being said, January 17th, 2014, before the death, we didn't break up. I was never friends with Ankar. But February 17th, 2014, we were going to look at what Merriam-Webster says before then, because this is before Trump's presidency, when the common definition was changed to Merriam-Webster. It says a way of organizing a society in which a government ruled by a dictator controls the lives of people, in which people are not allowed to disagree with the government. And that would be the definition. That was the definition of fascism, February 17th, 2014.
That was a terrible definition in 2014, and it's a terrible definition now. I don't know what the Merriam-Webster definition says now, but even whatever it says now, I would be very, very fucking surprised if it was able to define it particularly succinctly or well. The Merriam-Webster definition of a political ideology is usually not a good way of understanding that political ideology and what it actually is.
So what it says now is a political philosophy, movement, or regime such as that of the fascisti that exalts nation and often race above the individual, that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition. Is the definition it says now. Yeah, which was weirdly, the common definition was weirdly changed. The common definition was weirdly changed when during Donald Trump when he won the presidency. It was weirdly changed.
Okay, but I don't agree with either of those definitions, right?
That's fine. You don't have to agree with the dictionary.
I do disagree with the dictionary. On regular fucking occasions, we recognize that the dictionary definition is not sufficient to cover the nuances and intricacies of particularly complicated topics like political ideologies or philosophies. Okay, we recognize that. Okay, so
Like I said, feel
that's
free
fine.
to disagree with the dictionary. That's fine.
Yeah, I would say as well. Something
Fucking shit. Do you really think the dictionary is a good place to get a definition of all kinds of political philosophies?
Something
you-
as deep as fascism, you can't just look up the definition in Merriam-Webster and get the whole totality of what it actually means and what it actually looks like in the real world. I mean, some of the in the beginning with Mussolini, what the Italians used to chant was everything for the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state. So it's very subordinate to the state. It's like Vivian said, it's you conform to the state, and that's in a way what makes it nationalistic as well. You also scapegoat some type of people. In this instance, in the most recent instance, we can point to the GOP, and you see Trump scapegoating immigrants time and time and time again. Another one is that it's staunchly anti-democratic.
When did he scapegoat?
Staunchly anti-democratic. And then another one is, as Vivian said before as well, the fascist leader is trying to purify the group. So the group as a whole, you conform to it. He purifies it. They pick somebody or some group to scapegoat. With the Nazis, it was the Jews. With
And
Trump,
everybody
it was,
else.
it was immigration.
So
And
tell me when
you
he
can't just
tell me when he
look these things
scapegoat
up in the
immigrants.
dictionary and all of a sudden have a clear understanding, because that definition to me sounds more just like totalitarianism. It sounds like a complete.
That definition is better than the old definition,
The
but it doesn't
definition that
include.
Sprouticus
It
read
includes some.
just sounds like totalitarianism to me,
When
which
did
is
Trump-
The original
So,
one, yeah.
so tell me when Trump. Tell me when
2014
Trump. Tell me when
definition
Trump
does just
scapegoated
sound like
immigrants.
authoritarianism.
tell me when
Sorry?
Trump
When did
scapegoated immigrants.
His
Scapegoated immigrants,
whole
I've asked that
his
three
whole thing
times.
was to
His
build a
whole
wall.
shtick was scapegoating immigrants.
Please tell me.
His whole
Bring
thing
up
was scapegoating
bring up
immigrants.
points, and we'll
What do you think
discuss.
he was
and
building
then
a
I
wall
was
against?
scapegoating immigrants.
Mexican
Huh?
food?
for
No,
what?
he was building a wall against immigrants. That was his whole. That was his
He
whole.
was
deal.
building a wall to
Crap
enforce
Army,
border
they chanted
security.
it at his rally.
Oh,
No,
Yes, it
you
is
cannot jump. You're not going to tell me that the border wall was about fucking border security, dude.
Yes, it was
Come
about
on.
border security.
There's no. You really think the border wall is stopping any illegal immigration? Come on.
It's actually bringing
Okay,
it
but
down
why?
by a
Okay,
large
but why?
amount.
Why does? Why was Trump so concerned?
Why are
Why was
countries
Trump
building
finish
walls
so
after
around
that,
their
concerned?
borders?
Vivian. Sprouticus finish after that, Vivian.
Okay, so why are other countries building walls around their borders when they have an illegal immigration problem? Not an immigration problem, an illegal immigration problem. We are a country of laws. We stick by these laws. We can't just allow people to come in, break the laws, and decide they're just going to stay here. Building a wall is there's many countries that have done it, and it's not just us that have done it. So to say that it's just us that have done it, we're scapegoating the immigrants. It's insane to say. It slows things. It slows down illegal immigration. It doesn't stop it. The goal was never to stop it, but if you actually go talk to Border Patrol agents like I have, they actually say that the border wall helps because it does slow it down. It makes it harder for them to get over, so they can't just rush past Border Patrol agents, and Border Patrol agents are able to grab these people who are just rushing the border and are able to actually stop it before it actually gets into the States and they just get lost inside of America. So that is not scapegoating immigrants by building a wall. I'm sorry.
Okay, but you wanted to build the wall because you were saying that like immigrants presented like certain problems to Americans, right? Some
Do you not
of
think
those
MS-13? Do you not think
I
MS-13?
thought this was Sprouticus
none
and
of us
then
deny
Pitch. Shut the
that
fuck
Trump
up.
had.
He said the Mexican judge couldn't do his job correctly because he was Mexican, even though he's Mexican American.
No, that's actually not true. He was actually like there was
No,
like more complications.
No,
Like,
it is true. It is true. And he also
Yo.
and the biggest driver of his whole thing was that immigrants are coming here and taking your jobs. He was using Mexican immigrants, saying that this is why in the Rust Belt you have fallen on hard times because brown people from Mexico are coming here and taking your jobs, and the elites have let it happen. That was like his whole thing when he was going on and on about it.
And
He
not
was
just
also
Oh,
perpetuating the narrative.
If you're
that-
gonna
that-
deny this, you were asleep at the last 4 years, or you're just lying to me.
Right,
Well,
but
people-
none
was
of us
mainly-
can
he was
deny
mainly-
the fact that Trump had anti-immigration, like his ethos was anti-immigration, and he was very harsh on
cool.
immigration. That was his ethos. Like none of us are going to deny that. But
Well,
what was
Sprout did.
But what?
He was,
What?
no, he was very
No.
harsh on illegal immigration. He wasn't harsh on immigration. He was harsh on illegal immigration. There's
Illegal
a huge
immigration,
difference
right.
between the two.
Well, I don't know. He did try and ban
He was,
immigration.
but he
from
was also
several-
saying
He
that
tried, wait. He tried to ban immigration from several countries, right? Not just illegal immigration. He tried to ban straight up immigration from
So he barred
a large
so
majority
he
of
barred,
like
he barred
Muslim
immigration.
countries.
He barred immigration from certain countries when there was a threat of terrorists coming to the country. Yes, just like he barred people coming from China or coming from Europe.
So why
when there
didn't he
was
bar?
so when
Why
there was
didn't he bar
COVID, right?
people from Saudi Arabia?
Because we work with the
Because we're
Saudi
allies
Arabian
with
government.
Saudi Arabia. What?
This
Right.
mental gymnastics.
Like,
trying out for the
so
Olympics.
you're
with
allies with
Spartacus,
Saudi
like,
Arabia.
the
Yes,
moment
we're allies
you're
with Saudi
willing to
Arabia.
jump
Yeah,
for.
we're allies with
Like,
Saudi Arabia.
To act
And no
as if Trump
Saudi
did
and
not
no
use
Saudis have been involved in terrorism on
Yep.
U.S. soil.
no
Wait, it
Saudis
doesn't
have
matter
ever
if
done
they're
it.
involved.
Okay.
We're
Yeah,
So
allies
if
with
you're
Saudi
trying
Arabia.
to, if you're trying to,
since
if
then
you're
we
trying
furthered
to
since then we
restrict
furthered since then we
if you're
furthered the
trying to
relationship.
restrict
Okay, so
terrorism,
since then we've
and
furthered
not just to restrict, and if you're trying to restrict terrorism and not just trying to restrict Muslims, or more accurately, throwing red meat to your base and saying how we're going to keep the muzzies out, right?
that is
like-
not what happened.
That's
the fuck
basically
outta
what the
here with
policy
that,
was
dude.
for. So if what you're trying to do is stop terrorism and not just throw red meat to your base, right? Then you would be trying to ban travel from Saudi Arabia, right?
No, Saudis
Because-
are allies. We already just discussed this.
Okay, but Saudis have financed terrorism on US soil. In
Sure,
fact,
and we're okay
some-
with that.
you're okay
They're
with
our
that.
allies.
You're okay with
Well,
that?
no, I'm saying.
Wait,
no,
wait,
no,
Okay, well,
I'm saying
fine.
we're
I mean,
asking
no,
you guys
that's
to
fine. I mean, obviously, so you accept, right, that like trying to stop terrorism is not the purpose of these of his
No,
attempted
it is.
Muslim
We
ban.
furthered our relationship. We furthered our relationship with Saudi Arabia since then. That definitely put a dent in our relationship with Saudi Arabia, and we furthered our relationship since then. And with that being said, we've then now moved on to there is a threat of terrorism coming from these nations, because we've seen it happen in Europe, we've seen it happen in the United Kingdom of all places, and now we're not going to let it happen here. We're seeing this happen in other places. We're not going to let it happen here. Same reason Donald Trump barred people from coming from China over to the United States because of COVID. And then later barred Europe from coming over to the United States because of COVID. This wasn't, because actually, as a matter of fact, Nancy Pelosi called Donald Trump a xenophobe, and then went into Chinatown and danced around saying there's nothing to be scared of. Look, I'm going to sit here and dance in Chinatown. So this is the argument that's brought up anytime there's a travel ban or an immigration ban that also isn't permanent, right? It was temporary. So with that being said, this is what happens every time. Oh, you're scared of bringing Muslims here. Oh, you're scared of the Chinese. Oh, you're scared of this. Oh, you're scared of that. You just don't want the Muslims here. You don't want the Chinese here. This is what happens every time. Is names get thrown because people don't understand the intricacies of foreign policy, and the names get thrown.
So
Okay,
look,
I just
look,
wanna-
Sprout, wait, because this is really important. Okay,
I'll try to you
like,
after a week. Sorry, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got some helpful people in our chat, like pulling up some quotes here from Trump and stuff. In an interview, Trump literally stated, in fact, that he wanted to keep Muslims specifically out of the United States. The reporter asked him, Donald, a customs agent would then ask a person their religion. Trump, they would say, "Are you Muslim, Geist?" And if they said yes, they would not be allowed into the country. Trump, that's correct, right? So yes, Trump was trying to stop Muslims specifically from entering the country.
Because it was Muslim terrorism, right? That was happening in the UK. It was Muslim
So
terrorism.
Muslims.
Okay,
I just want you to admit that
It wasn't
you're
Christian
backtracking
terrorism,
on
was
what
it?
you just
said.
There's been Christian terrorism, but it wasn't Christian terrorism at the time, right? So if we're gonna talk about this, we need to talk about it within the stance, right?
No, but you're
All right,
backtracking.
Wick,
You're
go ahead.
literally.
I'd like to
I'm
add
not-
in
I
additional
don't care, I'm going to
points.
stop
I have
muting
very
people.
Ridiculous. I'm
serious
not
ideas
backtracking.
about this topic.
You literally just said it wasn't about banning Muslims, and now you're justifying.
It's
it
because
being
of
about
where.
banning
It's because
Muslims.
of what countries
I'm going
the
to
Muslim
mute
terrorists
people.
were
I'm
coming
sorry.
from.
I'm going to mute people.
You don't have the guts
Wick,
to
go
mute them.
ahead.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. It's hard to. It's this constant like changing of our positions. So the main thrust of the topic is that Trump was using immigration, specifically illegal immigration, as a way to fire up his base, to point to the other, to say, look, this is a problem. This is a cause of all your problems. This is an issue. This is a source of your issues. You're feeling an economic strain. It's because of immigration, illegal immigrants specifically. Drugs coming into the country, the opioid crisis, illegal immigration. He used this as a way to point out, like, is a way to try to get people fired up, to provide an enemy to fight against.
I have a
Vote
question
for
for you.
me because I'm going to oppose this. This is what he did, and we know this because of the vast majority of statements he's made. It's not just one policy. It's not just one statement, but it's an overwhelming preponderance of evidence that I'm not going to take the time to Google for you. You can do that on your own as exercise for the reader, that you can look up and see that time and time again, he has used the threat of illegal immigration to fire up his base, to generate votes. And this has caused a lot of animosity towards this group from Republicans and from Trump voters. Not all of them, but a quite a significant size.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you. Is there a difference in between your mind between pointing out a problem and pointing out its symptoms and scapegoating? Is there any difference?
Give me an example.
Yeah, it's who you blame for the problem.
Yeah. No, wait, Vivian, I didn't ask you. Okay. Like if I point out a problem and say like, so immigration from third world countries lowers wages of like natives in our country. Say that's the case, right? We don't have to actually debate about that. Would that be scapegoating or would that be pointing out a problem?
Depends on how you do it. It's not, in a lot of cases, it's not how you say it. It's not what you say. It's how you say it and how you go about pointing out an issue. I can disagree with someone and be very, very cordial. I could say, hey, Cutsleeve, I think you're wrong. I think you're misinformed here. Or I could say, hey, Cutsleeve, you're stupid. There's a difference in how I point these things out. And so when we talk about immigration, and we could talk about that there are illegal immigration, we could have a discussion that's honest, that's in good faith about what are the problems with illegal immigration? How can we solve this? But we cannot do that when you're calling people murderers and rapists, when you're saying these people are coming in specifically to steal your jobs and things like that, when that is a specific example of scapegoating, harmful scapegoating, negative stereotyping, and it's just not true in a lot of cases.
Is MS-13 a problem at the southern border? Is MS-13 a problem at the southern border? I got a that's directed towards you, Wick. Is MS-13 a problem at the southern border?
The cartel.
Yeah, the cartel.
Of course,
the cartel is definitely a problem. Of course.
Okay, so do you think they're murdering? Do you think they're murdering? Do you think they're murdering people?
Are they coming in and stealing?
Vivian, I'm asking Wick. I'm asking
one at a time. One at a time.
There's more than one person.
Also, I have an extra point to add.
It's a stupid
Yeah,
fucking
me
point.
too.
MS-13 coming in and stealing jobs from hard-working Appalachians.
No. So that's not where I was going with that. But thanks, Viv. I appreciate it.
Well, it's fucking pointless. You're talking shit then,
shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up for 5 seconds, dear God.
Stop talking shit for 5 seconds. I won't have to talk.
I'm ignoring you. Wick. So Wick, did you think MS-13 murders and rapes people?
You know what? I'll stipulate to that. I don't have data, but sure. Okay. If a gang murders and rapes people, they're bad and they should be opposed. Yes.
Okay. So they should be opposed. They shouldn't be allowed to just walk across the border.
Sure. Why not?
Okay. So yeah. That's what Trump was talking about when he said that they're coming over here to murder and rape people. He's specifically referring to the cartel MS-13.
Again, the way he did that and how he portrayed things was very clearly not just them. He made it broad. He used broad generalizations. It was very clear to those watching that was not his only thing. He was pointing out that all Mexicans are MS-13. When
Trump went on and on.
Mexicans are MS-13.
Trump went on and on about how Mexico is not sending their best people. How Mexico is sending the murderers. and the drug dealers. And that was his whole point, is he wasn't just specifically referring to MS-13. He was basically calling all Mexican immigrants part of MS-13. That's what we're taking issue with here.
He actually went on to say that some of these people are probably good people, and so
Okay,
he
well, let
actually
me
said
give you an
in that
example
give me
here,
one
just
second. In
I
that
may.
same statement, in that same statement, he said that some of these are probably good people because you're also crossing the border illegally, right? So you have to assume they're okay with crime. But yeah, so with that being no, I'm still talking. Please give me 1 second. With that being said, I'd also like to bring up the part where MS-13 does do that, right? So that is a concern that we should have. And Mexico is completely fine of not taking care of MS-13. Mexico doesn't care that MS-13 consistently does this and human traffics people into the country, or that they're coming over into our country, invading our country, murdering or raping people. That's not a concern. And so that was a lot of what he was talking about.
I mean,
Can I
it's
give you my
obviously a
example?
concern. Can
Give
I
me
just
1
ask
point.
you one
Just
question,
real-
Sprout,
Mike,
before we
can I
move on?
just give an example real quick? That the what you said is bullshit, and let me tell you why. I can go and I can say, "Hey, Sprouticus, your takes this panel have been bullshit. I think you're a terrible person. I think you do terrible things. I think that you've been a terrible guest. I think you've been interrupting. I think you've been on bad faith. Oh, but sometimes you do nice things." Does that make you feel better that I added? Oh, but sometimes you do nice things.
He's talking
Yeah,
about different people.
Does that change? Does that change
Can I
what
give you
I'm
a question,
saying here?
Wick?
Does that change the thrust of my statement? Of course not. You
He's
can't
talking
just
about
say,
different
"Oh,
people,
but not
Wick.
all
So he's
Mexicans.
talking about
It's
different. He's
okay."
talking about different people, right?
Wick,
So
can I give you a
he's
question?
specifically referring to in the first part MS-13 and cartels of the like, and with that he's then separating and saying, yes, there are good people that come from Mexico. This MS-13 isn't the only.
No, he
isn't
kinda
the
covered
only.
it.
Wait,
Said
wait,
that,
can I
you know,
can I
Can-
question you?
Let
Yeah,
me
so
ask
wait, my
you,
question to you is,
Spr-
you're
Sproutacus-
specifically saying scapegoat is a, well, you know, I'll let you go after this because you haven't had the chance to speak, but you're specifically outlining that the difference between scapegoating and pointing out the problem is rhetoric, and specifically inflammatory rhetoric. But then that goes back to Sproutacus' point, because remember, this debate is about anti-fascism, or this debate is about fascists. So when he goes to say anti-fascists are actually fascists, their rhetoric leads you to believe that they're scapegoating other people.
Oh
Because
Can
my
we not go back to that
fucking
topic?
God.
but wait,
So-
wait,
I
that's
will
the
do
question
all
of the
sorts
debate.
of things to avoid going back.
No, it's very stupid. It's
Oh, wait,
very
okay,
vacuous.
look.
Do
All I'm
do
saying is-
all conservatives just
Vivian,
get given
Vivian,
toys
wait,
that are painted
Vivian,
with lead
Look,
with it,
all
like when they're kids?
I want to specifically isolate the fact that anti-fascists, Antifa, use like inflammatory rhetoric when they're talking about things like police, Proud Boys, Republicans. Do you deny any of these
Oh
claims?
God forbid we say mean things about the fascist street thugs.
What does that have to do
Okay,
with
well,
the
wait,
subject?
then-
What does
wait.
it have to do with whether
Well,
or
wait.
not Trump used inflammatory rhetoric to throw red meat to his base and scapegoated illegal immigration? What does that have to
Well,
do with it?
Nothing.
Scapegoating
Has
is a
nothing
very
to do
broad
with.
Wait,
It has
wait,
nothing
wait.
to
I
do
want
with-
to let Cutsleeve respond, and after that, I want to throw it to HardWoodenSock, who has been waiting patiently. All
Yeah.
right, Cutsleeve, respond after that, HardWoodenSock.
Here's what it has to do, right? And Vivian brings up the point like, oh, we're mean to people who do these terrorist actions, but then you just did like the layup for Sprouticus because Trump is specifically talking about MS-13, people who do terrorist actions, people who like rape and murder people. God forbid we're mean to them. So like anything you can say just goes back to the other side. And then Whick says, what does this have to do with the conversation? Remember Sproutacus'
What's
original
the difference
point.
between the Proud Boys
Wait,
and
wait,
all
wait,
Mexican
Viv, he's talking.
immigrants?
No,
Viv,
no, no,
for
no.
fuck's sake.
Fucking hell.
Remember Sproutacus' original point. The Sproutacus' original point was not denying that there are some Republican crazies out there. He said that they were on both sides. He never
Have I ever,
denied any
have I
point.
ever denied the left has its loonies? The left has its loonies. There are some people who are crazy on the left. I'll agree with that.
Okay.
The difference is we didn't elect our guy to the Oval Office. Like if you don't see that
It's
difference, then
HardWoodenSock's
I don't
turn.
know
It's
what we're
HardWoodenSock's
doing
Wait,
here.
we're not
All
talking,
right.
wait, we're
Second,
not
second,
talking
wait,
about
wait,
the
wait.
Oval
Secondly,
It's HardWoodenSock's turn.
the other, if we're gonna keep going back and forth on this scapegoating
going
thing,
out of
a few other tenets of fascism. Another one is staunchly anti-democratic. And I don't think anyone can deny the way Trump acted before and after the election was very anti-democratic. And another one
It's
is
HardWoodenSock's turn,
ano-
by the way.
Yeah.
Whereas Antifa
Yeah.
are very pro-democracy.
Hardwood and
No.
Sock, go ahead.
Not at all.
No, they are completely pro-democracy.
Go ahead.
Hardwood
Sock.
and Sock, go ahead. I'm muting everyone else.
No, it's cool. I don't care. I'm just sitting back and enjoying everyone yelling at each other. It's really comical. About Trump statements from like 4 years ago. But I actually have a question for Binx. Do you think George Bush was a fascist? Like I really want to get us
My
back
God.
to the topic here. Like what are your thoughts on George Bush? Was he a fascist?
George Bush, he was a guy you could have a beer with. You know what I mean? He was salt of the earth.
Oh yeah, no. But guys, we're getting too focused up on like these little trivial things, but like it seems like we all can kind of agree that the Republican Party is not the biggest threat to the entire world, right? So now we're just arguing about what Trump said, what Trump did. Oh, Trump bad, and it's like, guys, he's not in office. Yeah. He's not on any social media platform. All right, yes, some of his ideas are still prominent. Okay, but I believe
the rally last night.
Oh,
the rally of his revenge tour.
Good for him.
The GOP just kicked Bush out of her leadership
hey,
role because she wouldn't
I have
acknowledge
an interesting
reality.
anecdote to
He
add.
still
to
has
this
tons
discussion.
of sway over the party.
Okay, but was his rally broadcast on social media? Was it broadcast for the broad population?
Yes.
What social media platform was it broadcast on? Because from what I understand, like Facebook,
Telegram, Facebook. Yeah.
I didn't see anything on Facebook about it, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, it like the whole like Trumpian thing is, in my opinion, dying down. All right, from what I've seen anecdotally, right, on my friends list, all right, or like on my Facebook feed, or I don't have a Twitter, so I can't even like judge on that. But I think that some of his ideas are still prominent, but I believe that the number of people that believe that the election was stolen is continually going down. We're beginning to kind of get away from that, and by us like bringing this back up and just keep attacking him and keep bringing him into the forefront, right? We're gonna progress those ideas, right? So
I hope you're right. I hope it is dying down. I just don't think it is.
Yeah. The same.
Well,
I
that's
hope
why
you're
I
right.
opened
I
with
just don't
talking
see
about
it. He's
QAnon,
still the
right?
head of all these polls. He's still polling
we don't
well.
have to.
He's still holding rally. Who holds rally? He's
Wait,
not
he's
even like
polling
he's
well?
ex-president. He's still holding rallies, and people are showing up chanting "Lock her up." Like he
He's
he
polling
still
well?
has massive sway over the party. So we're discussing is whether or not the GOP is fascist. No, I don't think they're fascist. They are authoritarian, and they're leaning further and further authoritarian. And the guy who was just head of the party is an authoritarian, full stop. So
And the
they're
cult that's
definitely still
infected
there.
the party is fascist, though. That's
Okay,
the problem, right?
but
I want to go back to what Vivian was saying because I think she brought up the best point about this. If you want to look at, whether the Republican Party is dangerous right now, how many Republicans believe in QAnon stuff? I think that's what we should be talking about. That's the real danger. Is the QAnon stuff official policy positions of the Republican Party? No, but
But
do
I
a
wanna
lot
ask
of the
you a question.
Republican base believe in that shit? Yes.
What's considered a
I want to
lot
ask you a
because
question. What about Q is what about Q is fascist?
The central
Wait,
conspiracy
Vivian, I
theory.
didn't ask you. Vivian, I didn't
Oh, I'm
ask you.
sorry. Okay, I'll shut up. The QAnon expert can sit back, and somebody else can
I,
answer the
you
question.
deal with
about
cults
why
all the
Q is
time. I know
fascist.
this is going to be an easy dunk for you, but I specifically asked Lyra.
Okay.
Okay,
go ahead, Lyra.
so I mean, they are basically perpetuating the conspiracy theory that there's a deep state and there's a secret
Okay.
pedophile ring that
Okay.
involves all of the Democratic Party
What
and
part of that is
Hollywood elite.
fascist?
A lot of these QAnon people are advocating for Trump to just take control of the military and like execute these people.
A military coup.
Right?
They're calling
I'd
for
say that's
military
pretty
coup.
fascist.
Wait,
Yeah, they're
no,
calling for a
that's not
military coup.
Yep.
Yeah,
okay.
military coup.
Execute
What
them
part
or
of that
put
is
them
like
in
ultra
kidnapping.
so they're actually talking about a military tribunal, which is actually commonplace when you talk about treasonous acts. If treasonous acts were considered, it's
coup.
What
What treasonous acts were committed?
So, oh my goodness. So, if there's treasonous acts, you go before a military tribunal. That's kind of
only
what
if you're
happens,
part of the
especially during
military.
times of war. It doesn't matter if you're part of the military, if you're part of the government. You commit a treasonous act during a time of war, you go before a military tribunal.
If the military were to pull up our elected officials and hold a military tribunal to try them for treason and then execute them, that's a coup. That would be a coup.
Okay, if you commit a treasonous act in wartime, you go before a military tribunal.
That's not what they're
Sorry.
asking for.
I know America's always involved in the fucking in the Forever War and shit, but like, really, are we talking in wartime? Like, I don't think these are the same fucking thing. Like, we have a civilian government that's in control, right, and should be dealing with this kind of shit. But besides that, I just want to say, like, to Cutsleeve's point, right, and to elaborate on Lyra's point, right, what Lyra was talking about, describing the central conspiracy theory of QAnon, right? This is the blood libel and the protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion repackaged for 2021. It's the exact same conspiracy theory that the Nazis used to propagate, all right, about the 13 powerful families, continuous. Why do you think Marjorie Taylor Greene goes on about Rothschild having built this fucking space laser, right? Like, it's the fucking Jews, all right? It's always the fucking Jews. You dig down and it's always the fucking Jews. So yeah, I mean, the central tenet of QAnon is that conspiracy theory, which is repackaged blood libel and the protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion.
Got him, guys. Let's pack it up and go home. We got him.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just quiet.
Let's go. Closing statement. I'm done.
Such a stupid conversation.
There's two
Binx, go
really
ahead.
stupid people in here, so.
Well, I'm not gonna sit here and say I agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene, which is majorly what you went on about. So, I mean, I've got nothing good to say about Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, no, but you
so.
said that the QAnon.
I was adding clarifications.
Want
This
to
isn't
pull
a hill
people up
I'm
on a
gonna die on.
military fucking
All right.
tribunal.
We're going into
This is not a
closing.
hill I'm
I'm
gonna
muting
die on. This
everyone.
was just
Literally
clarification. That was just
justifying.
clarification. That was just clarification, not a hill
Yeah.
I'm gonna die on.
Oh,
Geek,
okay, sure.
I
So
really
you don't support
Closing
X-
statement.
No, I
Closing
I do not
statement.
support
Closing
military tribunals at this
statement.
point in time. No, I was trying to clarify what was going on.
Geek, can we hear Binx's anecdote? I know he said he had one a while ago, but I really want to
Yeah,
hear it.
Binx, go ahead. Closing statement. You start.
Yeah, I don't have an anecdote. I just wanted to talk for a while. I don't know what to say. I wouldn't trust Webster's definition of fascism. I don't even think Noah Webster was alive when fascism was around. Other than that, good conversation, I guess, or something. Thanks for having me.
All right. During closing statement, tell people. This is my last panel. Tell people where they can find you and everything. HardWoodenSock.
Yeah, so I'm glad that we answered the topic really early with is the Republican Party the most dangerous thing in the world? Everyone pretty much agreed no, which is great. And then we got lost into the weeds of specific statements of Trump was saying, not really having any sort of productive conversation. So like that was fantastic. I enjoyed it. I just sat back and laughed the whole time, watching everyone just scream at each other. So but it was great. It was a really good time. In and Out is still the best fast food restaurant. I wish I wasn't on the East Coast so I could have it.
I'm glad you agree with me.
Thank you for having me, Geek, as always. I appreciate it. This was probably the most lively one I've been on so far, which is fun. But yeah, no, if anyone wants to follow me, you can find me at twitch.tv/HardWoodenSock. Center right, and I like to have guests on to have like just normal conversations, not necessarily debates. Cool. Thanks for having me, Geek.
Cutsleeve, go ahead.
Yeah. So on this topic, yeah, okay. So basically, I'm not going to defend the GOP. I'm not going to defend Marjorie Taylor Greene. I identify as a conservative, not as a Republican. I believe in anti-establishment, and I think the GOP most resembles the establishment. I also think the Democratic Party resembles the establishment. Going back to my opening statement, it's the establishment versus regular people. The biggest threat to democracy in this country, around the world, is the establishment. As soon as they take part and they see that democracy isn't a part of their main goal or disaligns with their praxis, they're going to eliminate democracy because they have the majority of the power right now. And I'm not going to defend any person, any public party, even if it's my own party, that does it. But I will point it out on the other side. I will say Democrats also perpetrate this power in, I assume none of you guys align with the Democratic Party, but they also perpetrate this power. The GOP perpetrates this power. Everyone perpetrates this power. It's us versus them. It's not Republicans versus Democrats. It's us versus the establishment. Again, big tech is a way for them to be anti-democratic. They can censor us. They can say that this is not aligned with our public goals, so we're going to shadow ban you off the internet. This is what they do not only to conservatives, this is what they do to Democrats too. They do this to everyone who threatens their power. So at the end of the day, it's not Democrat versus Republican again. It's us versus them, and they have the power. They're the threat. You can find me at Discord. My Discord name is my title name. I've never rejected a conversation, so if you want to talk to me, you just hit me up.
All right, Vivian.
I'm really sorry for busting your brain, Geek. I came in here because, Danabo wanted me to, and I thought it would be fun with the topics. Unfortunately, we had, at least a couple of people who just had no fucking clue about any of the topics, so we had to do a bit of education, which they were rather resistant to, but that's okay. I'm MxVivianWulf, and I mainly talk about cults and extremism. And you can find me over at my Twitch channel, on Twitter, or on YouTube. You can also go to my channel and click the donate button if you've enjoyed what you heard here today, because I could use some fucking groceries. I am almost out of food. That's all right. I get paid in like a week, but that would be appreciated if anybody feels like doing that. Just on the topics that we were talking about, I think, I don't think that the Republican Party is currently the greatest threat in the world, but I do think that, like I said at the very, very beginning, I do worry about the ideology of QAnon and its various sort of splinters, and how much that has taken over the GOP. And I think we ought to all be paying very, very close attention to the 2022 elections to see just how many people win seats and see the attitude of the Republican Party, establishment Republicans, in response to that, whether they try and distance themselves from those people or they simply embrace them into the party. I think that will be a good indicator of where we're going. And if the Republicans win in 2024 after embracing this ideology, they will be in control of the world's superpower, the most powerful military in the world, the largest economy in the world, possibly, maybe. It's debatable. China may have overtaken the US at this point. But they will pose a very, very serious threat, not only to Americans, but to the rest of the world if they do gain power. So that's my position on that. I think we need to see where it goes in 2022.
All right, Pittelli.
Yeah, so I'm kind of new to this Twitch streaming thing, but you can find me at the same tag there, Pittelli like it is, with the underscores at Twitch. And when you go to my Twitch, you'll see my YouTube, my TikTok, and my Twitter links located there as well. As far as this question, I would say that the GOP is not the most dangerous in the world in terms of group, and they're not fascist, but they are. Trump was very authoritarian. Was the leader of the party. The party bent the knee to him time and time again, and they still are bending the knee to him. And when I mean the party, I mean the politicians that are in Congress. So he is an authoritarian. They're leaning towards authoritarian, and it is something, as Vivian said, that we should be watchful for and look out for, because it could definitely become a much larger problem than it currently is.
All right, Whick.
Hey, first of all, thanks for having me. This has been an interesting discussion. I enjoyed the first topic much more and the second topic much more than the third, but that's just how it is. In regards to this topic, specifically, I think that framing the other side as the greatest threat to the world is hyperbolic. It's not helpful and actually hurts the cause. If we want to begin to have discussions, if we want to have a debate and dialogue, there are much better ways to do it. And I think that we need to start talking to each other again. We need to start actually taking people seriously again, because if we don't, and we continuously just see the other side as an enemy, as evil, and we are the righteous forces of good sent to smite them and destroy them, then it's going to cause a huge issue in the future. And I think it's already starting today. You can find me at twitch.tv/deathofcertainty, all one word, no spaces, no anything like that. I try to hear people out. I try to have them on, let them say their piece and discuss with them. Sock is often on my channel, and we have, I think, very productive and great discussions. But again, thanks for having me. Follow and sub to Mr. Geek, because he puts up with a lot. I think he deserves some reparations for what we did to him today. And yeah, thank you.
Sprouticus.
So where I stand is I think that the Republican Party is not fascist. And most, like I said, there's a large portion of the party that wants DeSantis to be the front runner for the presidential nominee come 2024. But we have to worry about 2022 before that, so there's a lot of time between then and there. But what I am going to say is that the Republican Party is not the greatest threat to the world, not by a long shot. You look at CCP, you look at Russia, and you can obviously tell the Republican Party is not the biggest threat to the world. With that being said, I do agree with Wick. This is just demonizing the right, and we need to quit demonizing the opposite party. So the right needs to stop demonizing the left, and the left needs to stop demonizing the right. We need to realize that we're humans, and then we can have conversations that we can actually come to an agreement about, instead of just ad hominems and the allele.
All right, Lyra.
So yeah, I just want to say thanks for having me on. This is my first Hippy Dippy. It was really nice being here and meeting everybody. But yeah, I kind of am with Wick on this one too. I think it was a really dumb article. That's what I think. I think it's not helpful to just sort of call anything out that we might take issue with as fascism, or on either side. I do think it's helpful to call out fascism, actual fascism, when we see it happening, and when we see policy positions that are authoritarian or fascist. I think that is definitely something that needs to be called out. I don't think it's helpful to just say, oh, well, the Republican Party's fascist now. No, I don't think the Republican Party is just entirely fascist now, but they are taking some policy positions that I do think we need to be concerned about, that are authoritarian. And I think that's where the real conversation needs to be, not arguing over the definition of fascism, or whether the entire Republican Party is fascist. I don't really think that's helpful. But you can catch me at twitch.tv/LyraShae. I do politics in the evenings, and I mostly stream Final Fantasy during the day. So thanks for having me.
No problem. Binx?
What?
You ready go? Or...
Yeah,
I
right
don't
away.
know. Okay. Thank you everyone for being here. I really appreciate it. You have a good one. I'm going.
I love you, geek.
Nice clean outro there, Geek. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good, man.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to say goodbye to my chat. I'm going to rate someone, and yeah.
Thanks
you for
everyone.
being here.
Take care.
Yeah, thank you.